Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, Moors to Moors Talk Live 100. I'm your host, Tarhaka Amana El Bay, and tonight we're dealing with part 2 on our generational wealth. This time we want to deal with our language, networking, and rise or die, and what we are supposed to be dealing with immediate. What is our top priority now as a nation of people on this landmass? How do we build generational wealth? We're going to cover that. What type of mindset does it take? That's going to be included. What lies ahead for our people in America. Now, this is going to be crucial tonight, and we're bringing some heavyweights in, and they're going to lay it out for you. Should our march to wealth include our ancient story? Now, you know the answer to that question is yes. What part should networking play? We're going to deal with that some more. And with whom should we be networking with? What should we be concentrating on right now? Okay? These are just a few of the questions that's going to be answered in your mind tonight. I'm going to go to the commercials, and when we come back, we're going in. Okay, everybody, October the 26th, right here in Duval County, Jacksonville, Florida, the Black Vegan Fest will take place. Live bands, live entertainment, professional chefs will teach you how to cook healthy. If you are a vendor, go to www.urbangeoponics.org and sign up. Bring your fishing gear with you. If you're a fisherman, we got the river right in the back of the property. We'll teach you how to grow your own food, teach your children how to do the same thing. You'll learn how to prepare meals healthy. There'll be fun and games for the whole family. October the 26th, the Black Vegan Fest, right here in Jacksonville, Florida. Don't miss it. Make sure you got some cash with you, because vendors will be on hand and they'll be selling their wares. October the 26th, the Black Vegan Fest, right here, Jacksonville, Florida. Don't miss it. Be here. If it is against the law for the bank to loan out depositors' money to you, how could the bank give you a loan? And if that's the case, how are they able to keep their doors open? And in some cities, they have the biggest buildings in town. What happens to the person who deposits money in the bank? What do they receive outside of nickels and dimes in the form of what's called interest? How can you get paid? Go to TarhakaDebtElimination.org. That's TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Fill out the Contact Us form, and I'll rush you my free report. Let's get down to the bottom of this situation. Let me show you how what's going on in how to deal with it. Okay, TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Peace, y'all. All right, we back. Now, I'm going to bring in my illustrious brother from the Nation of Islam, because I was listening to him the other day, and he was talking about some real crucial stuff that we are currently dealing with in the United States. And I wanted to pass it on to you. I know some of you have already checked it out, but for those of you who have not, we want to bring him in, and we want to hear what he got to say. Okay? Y'all hold on while we ride.
Rizza Islam, welcome back. I Never Knew TV.
Yes, sir. Good to be back.
All right, serious thing, man. We're going to get right into it, right? I want to get into your a segment from your book, right? You talk about Samuel Carter's theory called, and excuse me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, drapetomania.
Oh yeah, drapetomania. Oh yeah.
All right. So it was considered a mental illness to run away from slavery, right?
Correct.
All right. But the reason I brought it up was when reading your book, I was really thinking like, man, we have to acknowledge the role sexism, classism, and racism plays in the field of psychiatry.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have these people who have these issues with certain groups creating this idea of how we analyze the mind, won't it be skewed based on the isms that they have?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you know that psychiatry was declared one of the architects of racism by the World Health Organization, I believe, in the 1960s. I believe it was the World Health Organization that declared psychiatry as, quote, the party that cultivated racism. They acknowledged how horribly influential psychiatry was involved when it comes to racism. You brought up Samuel Cartwright, who said that slaves who run away from slavery have a mental disease. They quite literally said, if that Negro, or they used the heavy ER, If he is trying to run away, there's something wrong with him. There's something wrong with you because you don't want me to whip you or chop your foot off. You know, there's something wrong with you. How the hell is it that today people can say pretty much anything that they want to say to a degree? But the higher up you go in class, since you brought classism up, the less people speak the truth. The more money they get, the less they'll speak the truth, because 9 times out of 10 they get it through sports, they get it through some type of, you know, field or endeavor when it comes to how this system works. They speak less truth, they have more money. So now they have this class circumstance going on. Racism is never going to be inseparable. You can be a billionaire, let racism hit you. Kanye West, for example, it don't matter. You will get hit. That still has power. And of course the sexism plays a role because now there is still a dominant of men, but now there are certain men trying to put women in a certain position to be dominant as a front to make it seem as though they care about women and women's rights and all of that. And there's a whole layer cake of where we're going in when it comes to this. But as a part of all of that, classism, racism, and sexism, psychiatry and those who control the minds will always have the superior control. That's my point. It don't matter where you go in any of these areas, these layers, these endeavors. Any one of these people can be taken off to a mental facility with simply a nod from a psychiatrist. Any one of these people can be declared crazy, have their money removed, their family removed, their entire career destroyed. Any one of these people can be put permanently in that area. Oh, that's her. Oh, he one of those. Simply by being declared mentally unstable, you know, schizophrenic, depressive, all of these things, brother, because of labels that were manufactured and manipulated by a group of people who are not even qualified to tie their own damn shoes. And I'm talking to the American Psychiatric Association. You're talking about some of the most wicked, evil, insane people on the planet who are controlling the mindsets of everybody else on the planet.
And I saw this when I was teaching, man. I'll never forget this. They had a particular student who was very active, I would say, right? And so one day I saw them just staring and a little drooling going on. It wasn't nothing extreme, but he was just basically staring. He was very sedated. So I asked the counselor what was up, and they said they increased his medication. And fire, this is a scary thing. I'm talking about a kid that had a lot going on. Then I guess, you know, they spoke to the parents, then they reduced it, then his behavior came back. But I was just observing the fact that just by increasing his dosage, what it did to him. He would just sit there and stare.
Yeah.
He said nothing.
Mm-hmm. That's what they do. That's the solution. Remember this. When you want to control an animal, right, just so, you know what, let's go back historically so we can understand where this stuff even came from. When they couldn't control people, they would put them in cages, right, as far as slavery. They would put us in chains, cages, all these things when they couldn't control us. They classified us as animals. You had certain psychiatrists who started to develop techniques that they refer to as breakthrough techniques. For example, when it comes to ECT, or electroconvulsive therapy, or electroshock, that was developed by these Italian brothers who were slaughtering pigs. They were, you know, in the farming industry, and they wanted to slaughter pigs. So they would put these 2 metal bars on the side of a pig's head and shock the pig so that it could become more docile. It'll fall right over. It wouldn't die. They wouldn't kill them, but they would be able to slaughter the pig easier because it could no longer kick around and move around, etc. That developed and evolved from the electroshock into the psychotropic drugging pills that are being used by over 500,000 children, by over, I believe, over 1 million children easily, and over 100 million people in America currently right now are on one or more forms of these psychotropic drugs. It is a way to control the masses of people because we can't control them anymore. So with students in classes, they just say, here, give them a drug. They get paid more money to put them on a drug. The more drugs they put them on, they get more money for that. Special education gets roughly double than that of the standard education. So it's money, money, money. Then we can control the child. Then after 5 years, just so you know, if they're on these drugs, they will no longer qualify for a government job or qualify for a majority of jobs and get disqualified for a number of other things because they will be deemed mentally unstable for the rest of their life.
But the thing I'm trying to figure out is that, like, I guess I guess this ties into population control we're going to talk about later, because, like, you're setting people up not to be an asset to society, not to be able to function in society. So what do you plan on doing with them?
Brother, that's a question that was posed to Congressman Dan Burton years ago when he brought up the example of autism, the skyrocketing explosion of autism. And he was asking these people, these pharmaceutical reps, these questions. He said, okay, so you're saying that these shots don't cause autism. Okay. You're saying it has nothing to do with anything that you are pumping out into these children. None of the drugs, none of the shots. He said, these children are going to get older. They're not going to die. We have to pay for everything that they have going on. Their medical care, health care, their everyday management, meaning the people who work with them, the special assistance for these adults, these children in adults' bodies. He said this is crippling those who pay taxes. And he said, you mean to tell me that the pharmaceutical companies have nothing to do with this? Nothing. He said, we need to question what the hell your role is really and start to investigate what these drugs are doing, what these shots are doing, and a bunch of other things, because you are creating generations of children that will no longer be able to contribute to the progression of society. And what will be the last decision to make, my brother, if you have a bunch of adults or children, again, in adult bodies who can't do anything? They can't talk. They can barely walk. They're not going to be able to drive. They're not going to be able to get married really and have children and have a real engaged life. Where are they going to go? That's when the conversation of depopulation comes in, because now that's a part of it. Well, let's see if we can just get rid of these human beings. That's one of the areas, and it's not a far-fetched thing to say, damn theory. This is a reality, brother. But they're crippling society in order to get rid of society. It goes back to history when it comes to the feeble-minded undesirables, which are terms that were properly utilized in eugenics, where they were saying get rid of these human beings. Remember, the sterilization movement had agreements in over 30 of the states in the United States. They were using sterilization techniques legally, right? So that whole circumstance is very real, and it's a silent thing that a lot of people, they're not hearing too much of right now. But you got millions of people on the spectrum, brother, when it comes to autism, and then you have all these other people that are handicapped, and you have all these healthy children that are just being doped up every day, and they are not able to live a natural, healthy life. And people talking about, oh, Johnny crazy. Oh, our little sis is crazy. She didn't take her meds. She didn't take her meds. He didn't take his meds. It's a culture now by these evil, wicked bastards who are not even close to being qualified to govern anybody, but they said, we found a way to drug humanity into a position where they are docile, we can control them. The problem is it backfired, because now this thing is going into generation after generation. Now the people who are supposed to be taking care of these elders who set this evil thing in play, not going to be able to take care of them. So now what's about to happen now? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's a number of layers to this topic, but it's a very real situation, which is why we can't put our hands in, we can't put our life in the hands of this system, because they genuinely are trying to take us out.
And that segues into another question I have here. In your book, Message to Millennials, anyone watching, if you don't have it, make sure you purchase it. Powerful read. You speak about the mentality of the character Thanos from the movie Avengers.
Oh yeah, Thanos. Yeah.
Being an exemplification of the world leaders who want to kill a large percentage of the population to save a small percentage of the population. Can you elaborate on that idea more and why you use that as an example in your book?
Absolutely. I had to bring that up because that is the ultimate agenda overall above everything else. They can't control the masses of humanity, so they are doing their best to now get rid of a large percentage of humanity. And they did a big test recently between 2020 and 2023, dealing with the quote-unquote pandemic. They wanted to see how many people would run out and get something without having any information about it, any real science about it, any real proof that it works. No information about the ingredients, no information about long-term studies. They don't know a goddamn thing, but they'll take it. Let's see how many will fall for it. Let's see how many we have to force, or how many we have to threaten their job, how many we have to threaten their education, their travel, their children's education. How many people can we get if we do all these different things and then eventually mandate it, enforce it, and blah, 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 blah. Over 5.3 billion human beings on the planet took the first dose. Let me say that one more time. Over 5.3 billion human beings on the planet took the first dose. You're talking about over 65% of the population of the planet. So that was successful. Let's make that clear. And if you start to look at the science and what has been coming out recently, it demonstrates exactly what their agenda was, because the science is proving. People need to look at what Pfizer said in their trial data before the shots were released, so that they know about the myocarditis, pericarditis, the miscarriages, the blowing up explosion in cancers, and all these other things tied to the shots before they were released to the public. I'll leave you to go look at the Pfizer data that was brought out by the Freedom of Information Act request. But they're looking at when we can't control the population, and this is not the only time this has been done, we have to enslave a certain percentage, pay a certain percentage, or those see who will be loyal to us, and then get rid of the rest. That's really it. We need those who can work, those who will work for us, and then those who can control the slaves, and then just get rid of the rest. That's where they are at this point. Thanos, his idea was, I need to get rid of roughly 50% of the population of the universe so that the other 50% can thrive and succeed, so that there'll be enough food, enough water, enough space, enough room. That was crazy. Brother, that was insane. Because realistically, the planet, for example, just planet Earth, has roughly 29 million useful square miles. But the vast majority of the population of humanity can fit in the state of Texas. And that's a fact. So that was an ideology that was pushed by a number of crazy people, and then all the way up to Hillary Clinton, all the way up to George Soros, all the way up to Klaus Schwab, all the way up to Bill Gates, and these, again, insane fanatics who then started to adopt it. And they're talking about now at the World Economic Forum, you will own everything, we will own everything, and you will control nothing, and you'll love it. And those who don't want to comply, we're going to simply get rid of them, or we're going to phase them out. People are going to get the chip, the RFID chip, or the brain chip that Mr. Elon Musk is coming out with. Those who don't want to get it, well, you won't be able to live life normally because you won't have your digital currency. You won't be able to check in certain places. Well, you can't get a house because you need your chip. Like, this is where it's going. So it's either you comply with this, or we're going to phase you out. And the only thing that's going to prevent this is by the people coming together and refusing to go along with it. I know a lot of people watch these interviews and they get tired of hearing the same thing, but you hear the same damn thing because you ain't changing your damn behavior. You ain't changing nothing. Maybe if you got the hell up and started exercising and training and saying, you know what, let me stop going along with this nonsense, maybe certain people won't repeat certain things. It has to be repeated so that you can get the hell up and change the direction. Certain people are, and I'm shout out to all of you who are actually doing something about it. But for the rest of the people, just make it clear, if you're like, oh, I heard this before, well then get the hell up and do something. It's real simple.
Facts, and I saw this thing recently as a super red flag to me. Florida House passes bill that allows teens to work over 40 hours a week legally, right? And I know teens work, right? And I'm not sure if they're working 40 hours, but they're definitely working more than they should. Now, this is the thing I've been observing after. I can't even say the word on here, but you know what I'm saying, after the thing. Companies still to this day across industries still have hiring signs up. A lot of stores that used to have a high population of elderly workers, specifically supermarkets and Walmart. You know Walmart, you always had an older person at the front, sometimes with a disability, but it was an older person, right? What I'm noticing now is the demographic at these places have changed dramatically. You don't see older people there anymore. You don't see anyone 30, 40. You see teenagers. So just from observation, right? I don't have any data, any statistics. Just from observing with a functioning brain, it seems like more people died during this occurrence than they're letting on, or people vanished, or I don't know what occurred, Fire, but I know like things have changed. I know that, like, because you can't still be unable to find someone to work at this point after that event.
The science that has come out, there are new numbers. Japan has done a study. There are about 6 nations in Europe that have done studies, including Romania, including Spain, including Germany, including Italy. They have done multiple studies dealing with before and after these injections. What they have realized is, one, they were lied to. Two, it was not safe and effective. Three, there are so many problems that have arisen. They have now done dissections on a number of the bodies of people. And what they have demonstrated is the mRNA technology has gone all the way down to the level of the testes, to the sperm level, the ovaries of women, how far it penetrates into the body. It was everywhere. So it's not far-fetched. It actually happened. Number two, the number of deaths, they have done a number of recounts after the scientific data came out about blood clots, about all these different things, and they've connected it and had to go back now to see what the actual cause of this death was, that death was. The numbers have come out. Some said 500,000 in America. Other numbers said over 2 million in America. Another study came out and said over 10 million. Now, I'm just only talking about in America from the shot, not because of the virus. And this is happening all over the world. So right now, people are starting to realize that, again, not only were they lied to, but the shots did the job. Many people are still alive. That's called individual susceptibility. Your body has a different set of chemistry versus anybody else. So there could be a number of reasons as to why certain people who took it are still alive, and this is not to scare anyone. You want to start detoxing, but the reality is a lot of people were taken out because of it. And that's the fact, brother. And this is coming out more and more. Mainstream media is not reporting on it, but world-renowned scientists are reporting on it. I'm getting this data all the time. And they know it's not being reported. It's being reported on places like Substack and Twitter and all these different areas by world-renowned PhD scientists, virologists, epidemiologists, cardiologists. They are talking about this data, and that's why a lot of people, brother, are gone left and right. People are having heart attacks. In 1 week, I have a friend that lost 3 family members in 1 week. All had heart attacks. 3 of them, or 2 of them, were under the age of 30. This don't make no damn sense.
That's what's trending right now. Heart attacks, cardiovascular fire, because like certain people, late 20s and 30s, is dropping dead out the blue, you know?
Yeah, and we know heart disease, of course, is still the #1 killer in America. We know that.
Yeah.
But not for people under 30. Like, let's make that clear. Not for people under 30.
The age, the demographic has changed dramatically.
Yeah, it's changing. There's a lot of other ingredients, we know. But let's stop playing these games. Let's stop playing these games, y'all. We have to actually investigate, at least be willing to look at it and say, okay, could this be? Is this a cause to the spike in that, and not only that, but the blood clots, but the Bell's palsy, but all of these other issues, the miscarriages. All of this was in the Pfizer data before the shots were released, by the way. Everyone needs to look at the Pfizer trial data from the shot. Pfizer trial data, the over 400 pages, over 400,000 pages, pardon me. You need to look at all that data before you open your mouth and say anything.
And we interviewed a guy, John Abramson, right? He's a whistleblower. And he was breaking down, like, first of all, how much money they made from this situation. Seems like they made more money in this time period than pharmaceutical companies made in like the last 3 decades combined. Mm-hmm. But the thing he was breaking down to me is that he was saying that these peer reviews are all false because the real information is not in the peer review. So even if they review it, it's a false document they're getting, because the only time you get the real information is through if it goes to court and they have to release it. They hide a lot of stuff, right?
Yes, it has to be.
But the thing I was asking, man, he was telling me about these meetings, right? So basically they have these meetings and they're actually sitting and budgeting, lawsuits. They kind of have a calculation of deaths. So I don't know, man. I'm not a lawyer, but that's not like premeditated murder, or is it not? Because it's kind of weird. Like if I'm at a meeting saying, you know what, we think 3,000 people are going to die after they take this, and we set aside a certain amount of money to deal with so that's not premeditated, or?
Brother, Canada has paid out over $6 million to families who have proven that they were killed and or harmed by the shot. Over in the United Kingdom, they have a compensation program for people who prove that the shot either harmed or killed somebody who they know, their family member, etc. Multiple nations currently are paying people money that proved that the shot did this to them. It's a fact. Can't nobody argue this now. It's a done deal. There are governments right now paying out money saying, you took that shot within the last 3 years, that experimental gene therapy, mRNA technology. Can you tell us what it did? Can you tell us how you know? Boom, boom, boom. You fill out a full form. Brother, again, Canada over $6 million. The UK, I believe, is paying $150,000 US dollars, a one-time payment. If you can prove that it did something to you and or ended with somebody's life ending in your family or the person who you are over their guardianship, they're paying that money out. It is a done deal. This is not a theory. This is an actual fact. And people got to start looking at it now. Once you see it, then maybe you can turn around and say, you know what? Let me investigate, get an individual separate toxicology report, separate autopsy report, because these governments, brother, they're being held accountable. Fauci just got brought back again in front of Congress. Again, 2 weeks ago. Like, what are we talking about here? This dude is a straight-up criminal. And since you brought up premeditated murder, for them to know about this data in the trials before any of these were injected into human beings publicly, and they knew all of those things that I mentioned to you, what it was going to do here, what it was going to do here, what it was going to do. It was in the trial data, and they still pushed the shots. Absolutely premeditated murder. Definitely.
What do you think about this? Is this body positivity culture contributing to the obesity crisis plaguing our people and unhealthy eating habits plaguing our people? I've been observing. You know, I'm a man that observes society, and I know it's always been an issue, but it seems like it's getting out of hand. But more than anything, it's being justified and supported and praised almost, you know. And I just focus on the health issue. I don't even focus on the look. I'm focusing on the health.
Absolutely. You know what, man? Somebody said this to me. They said, Reason, I don't understand this. When we were growing up, if you were fat, you were called fat. If you were skinny, you was called skinny. I was real skinny. I was a fat baby. Let's just go through the transition. I was a fat baby, real fat, up until about the age of 2 or 3. I was one of them chubby ones, right? And then it's like somebody squished me, and then I got taller and got real slim. All right, then now I went from slim to now I got, you know, I'm in that man body phase now. I'm all muscular, you know, like 88% muscle and 12% body fat roughly, right? So it's like, okay, cool. We go through our changes. The reality is now, body positivity is a trend being put in the place of lack of discipline. If my sister is overweight, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, yes, honey, yeah, you go. No, I'm going to say, no, plaque, arteries is struggling right now. No, ma'am, I love you. I love you enough to tell you the truth. I don't need to insult you. Let's not get it twisted. See, that's the difference. We start, you know, getting into insulting people and, you know, attacking their character. And no, you don't need to do that. Educate them. If you love somebody, you're going to tell them the truth. I want to see you around. Don't you want to be here? Ain't a damn thing positive about you having no high blood pressure, early onset diabetes, asthma. There's nothing positive about that. I have a cousin, bro, who's my age, who was a track runner, who has diabetes. I don't understand that. We are in our 30s. This don't make no sense. Our elders were not dying until their late 80s, late 90s, and some into the hundreds, or even, you know, 120s, 130s. That was average. But you're telling me right now that body positivity is something that we need to embrace? No, go to hell. Because can't nobody else get out here in their culture and tell you we accept body positivity. That's not what they do. You sound crazy as hell. Get some discipline. Get the hell up. Get the fat off you. Put some muscle on. Eat healthier. Do what is right for your health, or else you will not be here. You can't argue and justify with your personal health. That's the problem, bro. We're trying to argue and justify with it like it's an opinion. There ain't no opinion. This is life. You need to get up and move the body because you already have a whole government trying to take you out. Stop taking yourself out with them.
There are two things, man, you mentioned. One is accountability, which we don't want to hold ourselves accountable or hold anyone else accountable. And also, I think when people do speak about the weight, they do it from an immature standpoint, and they don't focus on the fact that we want you around to perform at your highest level for yourself and your family.
Absolutely.
That's the main thing. We want you around, and the burden that sick people put on the family. I think people aren't aware of that. When you're not healthy, especially if you're a man and the leader of the household, it becomes a serious problem for you.
Yes.
Because you're no longer an asset, you're a liability. Your earning potential decreases tremendously. And also now, you're putting more financial strain on the family you should be helping.
Man, good point. Very good point. See now, okay, I'm gonna do me. I'm expressing myself. See, let's dissect this nonsense real quick. The Caucasian culture, and I'm gonna generalize it really quick. Anything that goes against logic, for the most part, was Caucasian cave-dwelling mentality. Let's just make that very clear. And they justify by saying, I'm expressing myself. Okay, that's what mass shooters have said. That's what pedophiles say. That's what people who rape people say. I'm just expressing myself. I'm just being myself. No, no, no. You are being out of your mind. People have to stop adopting terminologies that go towards self-destruction. It's not body positivity. It's lack of discipline. It's not body positivity. It's self-hatred. It's not body positivity. It's lack of self-love. It's not body positivity. It's you embracing the lifestyle or death style of people who you look up to and follow, who didn't even get those abs or those glutes naturally. They got it BBL injected. Stop it. This is where this goes now. You want to have a BBL life, which is a fake life. Dudes getting their pectoralis major muscles injected. Women getting their glutes injected. Men getting abdomen injections now to simulate abs. And a person who looks healthy, a lot of them looking healthy, looking fit, can't do a real squat, can't do a push-up, and if they are in an emergency situation, they will not be able to do one pull-up to save their goddamn life. And you are telling me that that's the mentality you want to adopt? Stop it. We got to get away from this stuff, bro, because when we become liabilities, I was looking at movies, scary movies. I always look at the person who can't run away. I'll be like, and it's like 30 feet, and they can't run 30 feet. They breathing hard, or they trip, or they fall, and I'm like, man, we cannot acknowledge mediocrity. We cannot acknowledge having terrible health and acknowledge not being fit and ready for any type of situation, because if we acknowledge that, we're acknowledging and accepting our own destruction. We can't invite that in.
And one point you brought up that we need to touch on before we move on is that, you see, I understand the BBL, but I have seen things online with these men getting some type of reconstructive surgery, and I don't see how that can provide confidence, because the confidence comes from the work.
Come on.
Your confidence comes from you putting in that work. So how can I be confident if I get a surgery? I defeated the whole purpose.
Brother,
I'm still going to lack confidence and self-worth.
It's a cosmetic.
And I just spent all this money and I got this foolishness going on.
Yeah, it's the microwave version of food. It's the Kool-Aid version of juice, right? It's fake, 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 fake. It looks good. It sounds good. It smells good, but it's not good. That hard work thing is something in the recent years of me heavily being involved in fitness, for example, just as an example, I feel good knowing that I've earned where I am now. Like I can say
Say that again. Say the E word again. Say the E word again.
Oh man, brother, I'm telling you, I earned this. I can stand up boldly. See, you can't talk with bass in your voice if you didn't earn it. If you didn't earn it, you can't really stand on it. No, you can't. You can try. People gonna look at you and be like, man, knock it off. Okay, yeah. Brother, we saw the surgery, bro. Like we understand. And no shade to anybody who has gotten surgery or any type of thing like that. Y'all know, but let me just be clear with y'all. There are nations of people who are currently preparing. And what do I mean? The world is in a position where we are potentially going right into World War III. Some say we done already been in that, but I believe, yeah, it's leaning into that arena. If stuff started to crack off right now, stuff popped off right now, the majority of people wouldn't be prepared. They wouldn't be ready. You can't run a half a mile, let alone a mile. You can't do 3 or 4 or 5 push-ups. The average man can't even do 10 pull-ups. Can't do 5 pull-ups, can't do 3. But you're talking so hard, walking so hard out here because you got money. Okay, that's cute. But in reality, soldiers are the only ones who are going to survive, or those who are well trained. So that's why I don't get moved when I hear people doing all this talking. I did an episode on my podcast, the Intellectual Extremist Podcast, recently, where I talked about the health of the people. Do you know that the United States government, on a list of 200 nations on the planet, is ranked number 14 in obesity? 14.
That's not a shocker.
Brother, that means there's only 13 nations worse when it comes to the overall health. But out of 200 nations on the planet, and China is one of the least when it comes to obesity. So
I'm personally shocked that we're not number one.
I'm telling you. But we have to be humbled is my point. We have to really humble ourselves and jump out of this illusionary world. Get off of social media. Get back to reality. People talking real heavy on the internet cannot back up what they say. Take away the weapons and the money, and they will not be able to back up a damn thing. Why you think your brother speaks so heavy? Like, why? Because I know. Again, it's different when you really earn this stuff, man. I'm like, I know. The body positivity comes about when you are positive that your body is functional and works properly, and you're healthy, and your mind is good, your brain, your nervous system, your immune system, it works well. You don't have too many issues. You can say, man, I can run, I can jump. If I need to protect myself, I can. That's body positivity. But the rest of that nonsense is an illusion that people make to take the place of their irresponsibility, their lack of discipline, and their total evasion of accountability. Stop following celebrities who can't do more than you physically. I know a lot of them, and they are terribly horrible with their health. Please. Like, y'all gonna follow the people straight into hell. You're gonna follow the wrong people.
Black leaders, right? This is my observation. I want to hear what you have to say. It seems black people don't understand leadership, and we have unrealistic expectations of our leaders. They're almost looking like a God-perfect figure and not looking for a human figure. I know as a leader, though, I will say this. I think as a leader, you should be multi-dimensional.
Absolutely.
But you're not God, right? Mm-hmm. And an example I'll use is like Marcus Garvey, right? Mm-hmm. Brilliant orator, a great organizer, but he probably wasn't the best businessman, right? And I think that, and I understand infiltration, we could go into the story, but I just feel that like we're not acknowledging the strong point of leaders, and we're looking for leaders to do everything when that's not realistic. And leaders need to humble themselves and get help in areas where they need help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's mainly in our culture where we attack the people who are trying to help. It's mainly in our culture where we attack the people trying to help us, attack the people trying to guide us, attack the people who are trying to warn us about an entity, a power, a government that is really trying to come and take us out, deprive us of, our livelihood, our education, whatever it is. We attack those people. Why? Because we don't want to change. And I'm going to say this. You don't want to be reminded of what the hell you know you need to be doing. We don't. We got too comfortable right now. Social media, bro, has spawned an entire generation of comfortable, mediocre people who think that clicking a button is the same as being active on the ground in real life. That clicking the button is equal to doing the real work. You brought up the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Brilliant orator, phenomenal organizer, he was wonderful at starting business and at least getting these things going, backing his words up. Same thing with the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, getting them started, at least getting it moving, and having people that believe in the mission. Most of our people don't even know what mission is. We don't know what it means. We have no sense of that. You say mission, they say, oh, you on that woke stuff, or oh, here you go, black militant, oh, you one of them black power, they call it Hotep, they call it a bunch of weird Negroes on the goddamn internet who have watered down the spirit of actual revolutionary liberation. Negroes who are on YouTube. Shout out to YouTube, but you are not no damn activists for the majority of y'all who just talk and talk and talk. Then when you talk to them in person, they don't know history. They don't want to sacrifice nothing. They are comfortable getting those checks. Get your checks. Nothing against that, but don't get your checks and talk down on people who refuse to get the checks the same way you doing because they choose to do the real grassroots, boots on the ground work. I always make sure, brother, to acknowledge both sides. If you're going to be talking, you might want to connect with the people who have been sweating, having blood sacrificed out here, doing this work. Do not be out here talking as if because you have 1 million subscribers that means you have 1 million people that are going to move if you give the order. Y'all don't have that. None of you have that. Not one of you. Okay?
Say that again. I think that's the disconnect. Say that again. I think that's the total disconnect with the internet at all, whether it's influencer, artists, social commentaries. Explain that again.
Just because you have 1 million subscribers to your channel does not mean you have 1 million followers, soldiers who are going to activate under your direction when you give an order. It does not communicate the same. They don't equate. They are not related the way you think. Marcus Garvey had soldiers. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has soldiers. And these groups that were doing the work, the reason why we still talk about these groups is because of how effective they were and or are. That's why we still talking about them. Because of the work that was done, not the talking only, not just the cosmetic effect of what things look like, but the actual work that was done. People who could point a finger and the soldiers move. People who could say something and the soldiers activated. That's different than us making a post or a video. It's a part of it. That's beautiful. I appreciate that. But that's the difference when it comes to leadership. We got to stop attacking the people who come here to help. We just have to stop. Just say you don't want to get involved. Cool. I respect the person who's like, look, Reza, that ain't my lane. That's your lane. And I'm proud of you for being in that lane. I'll support by either buying a product or sharing the information. But that ain't my lane. See, I respect that. More people should get involved in doing it that way. Just saying if it's your lane, if you want to get involved that way or not. That's the best approach. Rather than just wholesale attacking the people who are involved in certain lanes. That's what we should stop doing. That's why I constantly, you don't see me all over the internet, brother, attacking any of our people trying to do something, man. I mean, just, you have a number of people out here doing some good in some area, whether if it's the drug education or if it's exposing the mental health field or if it's prostitution that they're trying to help the sisters or, you know, the globalization, the effeminization agenda, the population agenda. You have a lot of people in these arenas. So if you're doing something good for the people, I applaud you. It don't matter what it is. I applaud you and I support you. If you are attacking any of our people who are doing good, however, I will say you are a clown. You are a damn joke, and you should stop talking because you are not involved in the mission. And the thing is, we have to get back in our mentality of understanding that the mission is still alive. We are still at war. We are not post-racial. Everything isn't great now. We're all fun and happy-go-lucky, and we don't have no trauma. Drugs are a thing of the past. Poverty is a thing of the past. Everybody got money. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's family is great. Everybody's out of jail. That's not the reality. Issues still exist. Problems still exist. And if all these things still exist, then that means our ability to handle them has to be activated now, bro. We have to get up and do the work. Ain't nobody else doing it for us. And that's the main thing we got to get out of our head is waiting on somebody else to come and do it for us. And that's why a lot of folks don't even want to lead nobody no more. Because they're like, man, hell no. Them folks going to kill me. If I try to get out there and tell them the right thing to do, they're going to try to attack me. I've been there before, but that's why I speak the way I do, because I don't give a damn. I only focus on those who actually want to do something, and that's the ones that I roll with. Everybody else, I don't even engage with. As long as you don't try to walk up or stop me from doing the work, we all good.
And the thing, too, I think people that, well, first of all, we have to hold our leaders or those in the leadership position accountable. But what I'm noticing is that people don't understand the difference between accountability and criticism.
Right.
There just seems to be this onslaught of criticism, and if there's accountability needed, it needs to be done. But what I'm seeing is not necessarily accountability. This goes back to what you said earlier. They want to see this drama, have a story, or they're big into, what's the thing we call now? Not the expose, they cancel it. They want to see somebody cancel. That's the thing right now.
Of course. Interestingly enough, if you want to criticize someone, like I said, the difference between holding someone accountable versus critiquing or criticizing. If you want to hold someone accountable, that's when you are insisting that they do something about what they know is wrong. Okay, you know this is wrong. I just will encourage you to do this, do that, boom, boom, boom. All right, holding someone accountable, that's a beautiful thing. Same thing with me. We all have to be held accountable when we do what is wrong or when we fail to do what is right. We should be held accountable, and we should be willing, as people who consider themselves being in leadership positions, in influential positions, we have to be willing to hear that and be humble, sincerely. That's point number one. Point number two, people who critique and who are always criticizing, the one thing they constantly leave out is the solution. Well, hell, if you could do better than I did, how about you tell me what I should do? Matter of fact, better yet, show me how to do it better. Why don't you get out here and do it? And that's the one thing that makes me say I am not listening to the vast majority of people. I can hear criticism. If anything is true that I need to work on, absolutely, I'm going to do that for sure. I want to make sure I'm doing right and that I'm right in everything that I do to the best of my ability. Not perfect, but man, it's best as I can do it. But why y'all not out here doing better than the people you're criticizing? Why aren't you doing it? Well, I don't like how you did that. Okay, well, brother, you show me. Well, no, I'm just saying. Oh, then shut your damn mouth. How about that? If you're not going to get out here and do it, brother, then please, I recommend just stop. It's like when people, I hear people criticizing all of our leadership. And I'm not talking about actors or athletes. I'm talking about the actual activists, the ones who did this work and have been doing this work. Anytime I hear people criticizing them, even if it's correct, even if the criticism is valid, I constantly am asking them, okay, so what is the solution? Or what will you have them do? Tell us.
But, hey, I want to go back to what I said earlier with this God figure and these people looking for this perfect being.
Mm-hmm.
The criticism is like an absolute. So, for instance, now you're doing the work, right? And you're doing the work, but there's something you dropped the ball on. Your absolute being now is this corrupted and terrible person, not focusing on the fact that, like, you just didn't do that part right. Or you struggled in that part, or you dropped the ball in that part. And the conversation is not improving that part or accountability in that area. Your totality as a human being now, you're this terrible person.
You did 99 things right,
lies.
one thing wrong, so everything is wrong. That right there, that wholesale generalization and canceling is insane.
That's the issue culturally within our culture, and I saw a great presentation by Farrakhan where he speaks about the disease of jealousy.
Yes.
And I think jealousy plays a role in it because for whatever reason, man, like, people don't want to see people progressing. I don't care what you do in 5 years. Like, they really don't want to see it, you know? Whether it's helping people or hurting the community, regardless, they don't want to see you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, the envy and jealousy is big, too, because, you know, the jealousy is, I don't like that people like you. The envy is, I wish I had what you have that makes people like you. So it's like you got envy and jealousy, which, you know, a person who is envious and jealous, they can potentially become a killer. That's where it goes.
It's a serious thing, man.
Yeah, they will. Like, if it keeps digging at them and they keep seeing somebody who they feel is in their position or has what they feel they deserve or what they want, and they don't like that you got it and they want it, you got some people who will move to that point. I've heard people on the internet with pretty large followings, supposedly followings or numbers at least, talking about people who have done this work, who have been doing this work for over 20, 30, 40 years, and they're jealous of those people. I'm talking about people who are 50 years their senior, 50, 60 years older than we are, and talking about them as if they own the same playing field because they have social media platforms. I'm like, wait, hold up. Quick question. You built up a channel off of attention, not off of work. You got attention. You can get 1 billion views off of a video of you slapping somebody. That doesn't make you a leader. Like, that's not. You have a big misunderstanding on that. So that.
Oh, I know you're talking about, man. This guy, man.
You said what?
I know you're talking about. We good. Yeah,
brother. I mean, I'm like, I'm not getting it again. So that envy, that jealousy when it comes to leadership and that wholesale canceling, it's sad because we don't give our people any grace, no passes, and again, we come at people as if we are perfect ourselves. So you've been perfect your whole life?
That's the joke of the whole thing.
Damn, you've been perfect your whole life. You've never made not one mistake. But the moment somebody who you look up to or you like how they talk or they educate you, the moment they make one mistake, and I mean it can be something very small, like me, if I misspeak or if I mention a number or something or a date and it was incorrect, oh, see, he don't know what he's talking about. Forget everything else I just said that was totally factual. I may have misspoke. Maybe one thing has happened before. Oh, Reason know what he's talking about. Damn. Boy, I mean, no pass. Oh, I know he meant this. You know, our brother. It baffles me, man. I appreciate the people who watch and who understand that we're human beings and we're doing our best. You know, we're striving our best to live out here and do some good work, and they give your brother a pass. Appreciate all of you who are mature, intellectual folks. The rest of y'all, look in the damn mirror. That's all I gotta say. Just look in the mirror, please, and humble yourself, man. We really have to humble ourselves, sincerely.
Next thing I want to talk about is that, all right, so Dr. Amos Wilson really inspired me to kind of add this to my life. I've been doing it for years, and so I know white people study black people, but we don't really study white people. And I can say I've really been a student of white people since Dr. Amos Wilson introduced me to this idea. In my observation, I think white people know more about black people than black people know about themselves. Not collectively, not all white people, but you know what I'm saying. I want to be clear for silly people you speak about in the comment section, but I think white people really understand the essence of black people in America, while black people still don't understand themselves and their situation in this environment.
The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, "Study the white man, for he is successful, and he makes no excuses for his failures. He works together in a collective manner with his people." Paraphrase slightly there. The immature person will get mad at that. The wise person will listen to that and follow those deep instructions piece by piece, point by point. Study. Study. What does that mean? It means to look. It means to listen. It means to ask questions about. It means to read books about. It means to look at the history about a thing. Look at it economically. Look at it spiritually. Look at it mentally. Look at it agriculturally. Let me study you. How did you do that? That's what they did to us. That's all they did. Every single area of life when it comes to our people was studied. It wasn't just studied, it was dissected. It was carved out, razor sharp accurate. They dug into every fiber of exactly who we are, what we are, how we are, when we are, where we came from, our abilities, our powers, our authority, everything that deals with us. And they mastered certain components of it by studying us. This is not a joke. Again, people who are intellectually lazy will hear racism in your question. Well, white people studied us. Black people don't study themselves. White people study black people more than black people study black people. That's a damn fact. That's a fact. If you were not studied, you could not have been mastered. You mastered that which
facts.
You mastered that which you
say
studied.
that again. No, Rizzo, you here teaching today, bro. Say that again. No, say that again, man. They need to hear that, man. Say that again.
If we were not studied, we could not be mastered. A person who is an expert in something is someone who has studied it over and over and applied it and practiced it over and over and over again. I believe it was Bruce Lee who said, "I don't fear a man who practices 1,000 kicks one time. I fear the man who practices one kick 1,000 times." So that means what you do most, you will be successful at. If you study somebody, their habits, their culture, their history, their behaviors, how they walk, how they talk, how they build, how they understand.
Their psychology, bro.
Brother.
That's the thing Amos Wilson really put me up on, studying
Yes.
European psychology to get a better understand why this environment is the way it is.
Yes. Dr. Amos Wilson broke it down. Brother Dr. Neely Fuller in the compensatory code plan dealing with the system of white supremacy, that whole book that everybody should be studying. They all were breaking it down, dealing with exactly how the playbook was laid out. The architectural blueprint of how this thing was laid out, reverse engineered it so that we can do the same thing. You were studied, so study who studied you. Simple. Oh man, you said the white man is superior. No, he's not. But his method worked. Simple as that. You lost your knowledge.
Still working.
And it's still working. You lost your knowledge. Come on, man. Like, think about this. If there is a millionaire and he's white or whatever, I really don't care too much at that point. I care about the fact that you're a millionaire and I want to be a millionaire. So let me study you. See, a wise man can study. He'll sit back and learn and ask questions. I talk to people of all races, all backgrounds, all religions, all ethnicities, cultural persuasions. and I talk to them. I ask them questions. People start looking at me like, how can you say that? How do you move that way? Damn, how did you know that? Because I actually study this. I study them because I look at how the people studied us, bro. They studied us. They are the #1 consumers. They studied this. They like chicken. They like watermelon. They like dancing. They like hair extensions and nails. They like flashy cars and jewelry. They study, and what do? They provide the need based off of research. They like, damn, y'all like these cars and this jewelry. Let me control the diamond trade. Let me control the large manufacturing trade of vehicles. My family will own it, and I will make sure it gets provided to you because you ain't never had nothing that was too flossy, too much bling bling, and I provide it for you.
And hold on, Sizzler, Riz, anyone discrediting what you're saying right now, I want them to think about the rap industry, right?
Come on.
And the images you receive when videos were hot. I don't watch music videos now, but I'm a 90s dude, right? The imagery you saw in the videos and how that influenced your spending habits, whether it's through liquor or through clothing or cars, because when Maybach came out, Maybach was a big thing. Then you had the Range Rover was a big thing. Then we had all these things. So it's like they're targeting a certain demographic because they know what that demographic likes.
Yes. It's based off of research. It's what science is. It's what scientists do. They study. You asked a question. You said, you know, we're dealing with, well, since they studied us, should we study them? Why don't we study ourselves when they study us? They know more about us than we know about ourselves. Absolutely. The beauty is now the tide is turning. More of our people are becoming educated. More of them are studying. More of them are learning. More of them are reversing certain behaviors, certain things. More people are waking up to the system, waking up to the game, waking up to who is benefiting off of us. That's a fact. That's happening, and I'm so happy to see it in my lifetime that it is happening. However, it needs to happen more. It just has to happen more. We have to keep encouraging that. That's why you will never see your brother stopping. I'm not stopping no time soon, bro. Keep educating, keep showing the people that we have a lot more that we have done that is good, and we can continue to do good. This is quote-unquote Black History Month. Oh, man, even that right there was hilarious. Shortest month in the year, and it was formerly called Negro History Week under Carter G. Woodson, but now it's called Black History Month. Okay. But what are we supposed to be doing right now? Focusing more on our history, right? That's the one psychological effect I will say that works is because it's called Black History Month, it forces people's minds to focus more on things than with Black history. So if you really want to learn Black history for real, study it every day, not just in this month, but study it and accept the truth about what you hear, because that is what everybody else does when it comes to us. It don't matter if it's a lie or the truth. They say, well, I heard black people like this. I mean, I heard that's what you guys like. That's why I provided it. Well, I mean, I heard you guys eat this. That's why I provided it. I heard you guys wear this. That's why I provided it. They go off of what they study, and they activate on that real quick, bro. Very quick. So we have to be mindful that, again, studying others is a successful action so that we can get back into successful actions by studying our own people. First thing you should study is the successful people in our history who did the work and who were the most successful. Our kings, our queens, our rulers, our architects, our engineers, our scientists, philosophers, authors, builders. Study all of them first, for sure. And then in a modern context, study the systems that have mastered us as well. You got to do both. You've got to do both. One, so you know how well we were at it. Two, so you know how well they are at it. And then three, so you know how to dismantle what they have created and then build or rebuild what we created. So it's a marriage of knowledge that we have to get involved in.
All right. I want to touch on it.
Okay. There you heard it. Brother Rizal Islam dropped some heavy information. And the last part is directly connected to generational wealth. If you can do that, I don't see no way you gonna fail. I can't see it. But nevertheless, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're just gonna take a little break because we've been going for a while. When we come back, then we're going directly into generational wealth, language, networking, rise or die. We're going down in there. Hold on a minute.
Let me make sure I got this one right also. Someone tells you that you must pay them money about your children in the form of child support. They also say they would suspend your driver's license. And they said they would garnish your wages. Who were they talking to? A debtor? Or did they make the mistake and say it to a creditor? When you got married, they said it was a part of that also. Request my free report at tarhakadebtelimination.org. That's tarhakadebtelimination.org. Let's have some fun. If you'd like to contact us for my free report, and I'll rush it straight to your email box. What about this banking stuff? What's going on in the United States? I tell you what, request my free report at tarhakadebtelimination.org. Peace.
In other words, brothers and sisters, there is no one to save us but us. In case no one told you this, I'm telling you this. They told me. They thought I was white. So, you know, Dr. Fraser, I was at an all-white event. I'm sort of like, maybe God put me here as a spy, a double agent. We will not be saving black people. No. In fact, white folks are not even thinking about black people. Do you know who white folks are thinking about? They're thinking about white folks. They're thinking about their children, their wives, their husbands, their communities, their businesses, their educational system. They're not thinking about you. I had a good white friend who said to me not long ago, he said, George, I know the problem with black people. I said, oh, really? Really, Bob? What might that be? He said, you spend all your time thinking about us, and we don't spend any of our time thinking about you. Therefore, if you're not thinking about you, and we damn sure ain't thinking about you, who's thinking about you? Well, I had to do a Holy Ghost dance. I had no reply. Sometimes I feel that we are searching for a key to an unlocked door.
Hello guys, welcome to the channel. I hope you're doing fine wherever you are today. So in today's video I have a presentation by Dr. George Frazier. It is important, especially in the black community, and I know is those type of teachers that most people don't like him because of his teaching style, in as much as he might be having a greater message for the black community, but some people sees that the way he renders his message don't align with them. So but what I normally see is that what he says is what is really important, and he highlights the things which are happening in the black community which are really important. Those topics that most people don't want to touch, those topics that most people don't want to talk about, but he really comes out and talks about them in a constructive way. And especially he is that person who is not always soft with black folks, because he usually tell them the truth, usually tell them how things really are. And also remember, due to his ethnicity, he considers himself black, right? But you can clearly see he's mixed. So his identity of being black, I know, makes some people don't take him the way people should take people from the black community. But what I see from him as a person, and just giving my constructive thoughts towards this, is that he is a person who really cares for black people, and he really talks well of black people. It is that his message is always harsh to people, but I understand, because in every school, in every society, we have those people who tell you brutal truth, and I know, as a matter of fact, not everybody will take it in a constructive way. However, what I like about this video is that he talked about some things which are really important, and I think that's the best way to put it. In as much as we are not focusing on ourselves, we as black people, we are wasting a lot of time. Yet white folks are not even caring about us. They don't even give a shit of what we do. They are continuing with what they're doing. So it is a call for us to work together. It is a call for us to support each other as black people, as I've been telling you, because I usually say in my videos, the only asset that a black man has is unity towards black people. So as you know, this is your presenter Eugene Duke Stories, and I hope we get to learn through the video. I'll be back and I'll give you my thoughts, I'll give you my 2 cents on the same. I hope that you learn from this video. And hey, last request, if you're watching this video for the first time, you can consider subscribing to the channel. You can join my membership, really get to see what I can offer you. Until then, let's dive right into the video.
I have 2 definitions for leadership. To be a leader is to be awake and alert and to be dissatisfied at all times. Oh yes, we have come a long way, but we have much further to go. Therefore, brothers and sisters, I am not happy. But I am motivated by a positive anger directed towards positive change. What do we know about change? We know that you will never change that which you tolerate, and you will only change when you get angry. Obviously, black people are not quite angry enough. So we will continue to experience pain, death, and social injustice until we stop it, until we act, until we get angry. My second definition is that a leader defines reality and provides hope. A leader defines reality and provides hope. So I'm going to define reality as I see it, as a race man, as a black man that has served our community for 40 years, and it's crisscrossed the world. It's been every place that black people have been dispersed. South Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, West Africa, all over North Africa, all over South America, and all over the Caribbean. I'm going to define that reality. I believe that African Americans are at a pivotal point in history. The world is not waiting for us to wake up to our power. It is time for African Americans to take a seat at the table, not only in America, but also in the global economy. Unfortunately, we continue to place our power in the hands of those who have historically oppressed us, and even worse, we continue to oppress each other. This is the meaning of internalized oppression. To continue to fall into the cultural hypnosis of thinking that white America controls our lives is a true abdication of our personal power, and the reality is that each and every day is an opportunity for us to create a new and powerful story in our culture, and unless we find a way to write this new story and to claim our power, there will be devastating implications for our community and for the world. In other words, brothers and sisters, there is no one to save us but us. In case no one told you this, I'm telling you this. They told me. They thought I was white. So, you know, Dr. Fraser, I was at an all-white event. I'm sort of, maybe God put me here as a spy, a double agent. We will not be saving black people. No. In fact, white folks are not even thinking about black people. Do you know who white folks are thinking about? They're thinking about white folks. They're thinking about their children, their wives, their husbands, their communities, their businesses, their educational system. They're not thinking about you. I had a good white friend who said to me not long ago, he said, George, I know the problem with black people. I said, oh, really? Really, Bob? What might that be? He said, you spend all your time thinking about us, and we don't spend any of our time thinking about you. Therefore, if you're not thinking about you, and we damn sure ain't thinking about you, who's thinking about you? Well, I had to do a Holy Ghost dance. I had no time. Sometimes I feel that we are searching for a key to an unlocked door. That the door to opportunity in this great country, this great racist, white supremacist country, and it's racist and white supremacist, there's no question about that. It's in the DNA. You will not live to see that change. You will not fix that. There will have to be generations of white people that will simply have to die. Really. That's what's going to happen. You're not going to fix it. You cannot train that out of white people. They will have to die. So we have our work to do. Because there is more opportunity than we have the capacity to take advantage of. We just have to, as Dr. Watkins says, we just have to begin to think that way. The great Dr. Francis Cress Welsing left us with this, and I quote, "We wonder why we cannot, and we wonder why we're not making progress. We wonder why we're not making progress." This is Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. And then she went on to say, "I can't call myself a bitch, a hoe, a nigger, a gangster, and a thug every day and then get up and do something constructive. That's impossible." Right. The great rapper Kendrick Lamar said it a little bit differently. And I quote, "How can you fight for love on behalf of your people when you can barely find a reason to love yourself?" Kendrick Lamar. Drake said it a little bit differently. I happen to like Drake. I like the way he put this. I like the way he spit this out. He said, started from the bottom, now I'm here. Started from the bottom, now I'm here. Absolutely, I can relate to that. Born in Brooklyn, New York, in Bed-Stuy. We have lost our consciousness. We must get our consciousness back. The fight for social justice is never ending. We will not achieve it in our lifetime. And as I said earlier, many more will die before this occurs. But that's how it's always been. In studying our people, I have noticed that it takes us about 100 years to achieve the things that we want to achieve. Our fight for freedom. Isn't it interesting that we achieved our freedom without guns or money? And it took us 250 years, but we achieved our freedom. That's how awesome black people are. We freed ourselves without guns or money. Why do you think we were able to do that? We were right, and they were wrong. And whenever you're operating out of goodness and righteousness, you will always win. We achieved our civil rights, voting rights, and public access from 1864 to 1964. It took 100 years, but we achieved it. And we did it without guns or money. Why were we able to do that? Because we were right. How do I know that we will achieve social justice? How do I know that we will close the income and wealth gaps over time? I know because we are right and they are wrong. That's how I know. But we must chart a good and righteous course, and we must stay that course. And we must now understand that we must focus on wealth. We must focus on economic development and wealth creation. There are many ways to get there. We must answer the question that so many of us ask each and every day, but we don't have an answer. Why is wealth important? Not so that we buy more stuff. We don't need any more stuff. That's our problem. We have too much stuff. We are a consumption class of people. Jews are a merchant class. So we must shift our thinking from consumption class, because that's all we do, to a merchant class. We'll put a pin in that. I'll pick up on that in a moment. Why is wealth important? We are the only culture in the history of humankind that put political empowerment before economic empowerment. Last year we elected over 9,000 black public officials, and we're still at the bottom of the educational and economic heap. What does that mean? You cannot do it by politics alone. How dare you put that kind of pressure on our political leadership? But again, we are no fools. We were born at night, but not last night. We didn't come down here with the last drop of rain. We know that we're all impacted by public policy, and yes, we're all impacted by the politics of inclusion. And yes, we must continue to use the power of our vote to empower those who empower us. If they're not empowering us, if we are not a plank in on their platform as it relates to economics and the upliftment of our people and communities, then don't vote for them. That's on you. Why is wealth important? Your wealth will determine where you live. Where you live will determine where your children go to school. Where your children go to school will determine the quality of your children's higher education, and the quality of your children's higher education will determine their lifelong earnings. And your children's lifelong earnings will determine where your children live. And where your children live will determine where your grandchildren go to school. And where your grandchildren go to school will determine the quality of your grandchildren's higher education, and that will determine their life. Do you see the cycle of poverty here? Why is wealth important? Dr. Boyce spoke so eloquently, so fabulously, so granularly of this. That in a market-based economy, in a democratic capitalistic society, in case no one has told you, the only color that really matters is green! So until our pile of green is as big and as high and as deep and as wide and as leveraged as any other cultural group's pile of green, we will never be considered an equal at the table of democratic capitalism. Why is wealth important? Because when we finish pontificating ad nauseum about our issues, somebody's got to write a check.
Right.
Our Jewish brothers and sisters can write a check. Our Asian brothers and sisters can write a check. Our Arab brothers and sisters can write a check. I've been to Dubai lately, and they can write some serious checks. Stupid money. They got stupid money. We can't write a check. Let me say that differently. We cannot even convene our people unless somebody else writes the check. Ask the NAACP. Ask the Congressional Black Caucus, which I've spoken at for 41 years straight. Ask the Urban League. If somebody else wasn't writing the check, we couldn't even meet. We must fix this in the 21st century. So I'm going to tell you a secret that no CPA will tell. The tax system was set up for the landowner and the business owner. The landowner and the business owner. So if we don't own land, and we own the fewest number of homes per capita of any cultural group in this country, and we came over here on the Mayflower. And we don't own businesses, and we own the fewest number of businesses per capita of any cultural group in this country. And again, we came over here on the Mayflower. You cannot fully exploit the American tax system. The American tax system will exploit you. So one of the reasons Mitt Romney, back in the day, when he was running against Obama, did not want you to see his tax returns. Why? Not because he did anything illegal. It's because he's a big-time landowner, big-time business owner, and he used the benefits of that land ownership and business owner to pay a micro percentage of tax, far less tax on a percentage basis than you and I will ever pay. America is about equity and ownership, and the idea that the black community can exercise effective power, and I think you said this, Boyce, political or otherwise, without simultaneously exercising economic power is a fantasy. That capitalism without capital is just ism. So the question becomes for us, or the statement, there can be no collective will and vision without a strong sense of identity. And there can be no strong sense of identity without a unifying purpose. So the question then is, what are we unified around? What is the next big thing? What is the third and final moral imperative and moral assignment? The first two, freedom. The second was civil rights, voting rights, and public access. The third, as far as I'm concerned, is economic development, wealth creation, closing of the income and wealth gap. So, because when we look at the world today, we will see that powerful nations and powerful people are producing people and not just consuming people. And as I've often said in my many speeches around the country, you cannot consume yourself into equality, and you cannot consume yourself into power. And those people who depend upon consumption will see as they consume the products of others and do not produce for themselves will ultimately be consumed by others. Therefore, in the 21st century, the goal for us as a community must be to become a community of owners and savers instead of a community of consumers and renters.
Welcome back to the channel. Tell me, what do you think about this point in regards to we black people? And it is a wake-up call for, every black folk out there. What do you think about what he said? Because for me, I see that the things that he has said are really, really important to people from the black community. And then I'll reinstate this. In as much as most of people don't always agree with George Frazier for what he says, but I would like to identify with him in some things that he says which are really, really important. It is at this point that we black people, we need to get into business. We need to support ourselves. We need to stop the fights that we have amongst ourselves. We need to look into some things which are important. And I know that usually call black people out, and in as much as he is asked to black people, but I believe that his messages which are constructive. Some folks, some black folks who always take the information seriously, they have gained enormously from them. So I want to know, what do you think about this video? Do you think there's something new about it? Do you think that's the solution that we have for us as black people? I want to know what you think about this, because for the longest time we have been encountering our own challenges as black people, and I know that this is a powerful speech that Dr. Frazier gave, and it is going to play an important role, especially in changing people's life, in changing the perspective how we see things. Let's take business, let's be serious with which endeavor we are trying to do. And I'm really, really thankful for having time to also get to hear this speech, because it is important for us to always learn. Sometimes it takes a person to call us out from our sleeping chambers. I know sometimes we are not just asleep, but we need that great motivation. We need that deep motivation to get us out, or to get us out of the comfort zone that we have. So I believe that this message is really, really important for us as black people. We have seen, we have encountered different challenges, especially brothers and sisters who are in the States, and I know this as a matter of fact, and I recognize that the pain and suffering that our ancestors, I would say our ancestors, have gone through, or some of your ancestors have gone through, it would be a waste if we don't wake up as black people, especially my brothers and sisters in the United States. So I believe that we need people that can go out there and call us out and tell us things in our face for us to wake up. We are not perfect, in as much as we are standing for each other, in as much as we are all black, but that doesn't mean that we are perfect. So we need somebody who can call us out. We need somebody who can talk about these things. We need somebody who can have with us those uncomfortable discussions, because it is these constructive discussions that bring change. And you know what? I say,
Okay, everybody, we're back. Now, that was Dr. Joyce Frazier, and you talking about generational wealth. He's telling you what it takes to get that. Now here lately, I've been dealing with quite a few people. I help people with their mortgages, foreclosures, banking, credit card debt, being a secured party and creditor, and operating in the private, knowing the difference between public and private and how to function in there and how to live a life free health-wise as well as being debt-free. And this is what I do on a daily basis. And it's one thing that I want to say about that before we move on. If you can understand that everything in America operates on a continuous series of contracts, what we call contract law. And if you master the art of dealing with your contracts, being able to formulate your contracts at will, I personally feel like, and the reason I feel this way is because this is what I do. This is what I have done. I have been out there on the pavement, been stopped by police officers. They wrote me a ticket with no argument, no fuss, no muss, and I was trying to, hoping he write it as fast as he can, give it to me so I can go ahead. Because when I get home, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that ticket, which is a ticket in commerce, and I'm going to turn it diagonally, just right across it, no contract, refusal of contract, contract denied, no signature, no contract. And then I'll make copies of it and attach it to a certificate of service. And then I'm going to mail a copy, then I'm going to take another copy down there, I'm going to file it with the clerk's office. And then that's the end of that. Within 72 hours, this has got to be done. And this is how I do it on a different everyday basis. If I get a letter in the mail, well, you owe me X amount of dollars. You owe our company this, that, and the other. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is realize I have a choice. First, I can ignore you, or I can give you what you're asking for, or I can refuse to do it and do nothing at all, or I can do a counter offer. And I prefer the counter offer because I'm going to call you out on that right there, and I'm going to need certain things from you. I need to know whether or not you are even licensed to even collect a debt in this state, and so on and so forth. And this is what I do on a regular basis, and I teach other people how to do the same thing. Instead of just panicking and sitting there and oh, I don't know what to do, and these people don't do this, that, and that. No. We don't, homie don't play that. Okay, y'all hold on a minute, we'll be back. tonight we back have a little bit of difficulty with that right there. But we back and let's deal with a little bit of this talking black in America. Yeah, hold on a minute.
If you're a speech language pathologist living in America, at some point, somewhere, you're going to have a client who comes in that speaks African American English. As clinicians, we're expected to determine is there a disorder present or not.
We really want every speech language pathologist to know what African American English is, what are examples of it, how do you define it, how do you describe it, what are the rules that are followed in African American English, and understanding that individuals choose which of those particular rules that they're using, not because they picked them out of a book, but it's because they're either more prevalent in their communities or in their families, and that's what they've learned, because that's how we learn language, by communicating with each other.
At the core of patient safety is ethics. And so if we are not aware of those social differences, of those language differences, and we end up misdiagnosing, it truly becomes an ethical violation because we've not held that patient at the highest level. We've not held our standards to the highest level. So it behooves us as clinicians, as speech language pathologists and audiologists, to know what those cultural differences are for the patients that we serve, and African American language falls into that category.
Okay, don't forget, we're going to be hearing about 3 kids. We're going to hear about Matt and Butch. Okay, whose bike is this? It Matt. Is Matt. And whose bike is this? It is. Okay, the children's names were Matt and Butch. A. Okay, so whose bike is this? It is A.
Typically what I've done in practice when I'm doing a standardized assessment and there is a speaker who is using African American English, I'm going to be considering those features as not incorrect in terms of scoring overall assessment.
I'm going to need 2 words from you this time. Here Matt is fishing. Here Ann and Matt is on a swing. And here Butch walking. That's only 1 word. Here Butch jumping. Okay, listen to mine. Here Matt is fishing. Here Ann, oh we did that one. Here Butch walking.
So when looking at this video in terms of diagnostics, it is clear that she's using African American English. For instance, she's not using possessives, which are characteristic of mainstream English, and it's acceptable for her not to be using those in African American English. She's not using the B form. Again, that's an acceptable form in African American English. So again, these are some things that clinicians need to take into consideration when diagnosing children who are using African American English so that they are not misdiagnosed with a language disorder.
The assessments, the standardized tests that we use are not actually always normed to recognize the African American language. And so what we see is that a lot of times when the stimuli is presented, it is presented where it causes a burden to the natural language of the child. And so if you don't have a strong grasp or recognition of African American language, you may make the mistake of marking it as an error. When a child is misdiagnosed as having a communication disorder, they're typically pulled into speech and language therapy, and the impact that that has on children in general has been widely researched. But the extent to which a child starts to recognize that there are aspects of their identity, their language, the language of their community, that are then questioned or that are identified as wrong or incorrect or bad in some way, I think could have significant effects on kids.
They may feel like they're not as good, or they may not talk like some of their peers, or they can't achieve what their peers can. But that's why I think it's critical for us to be aware of what characterizes the language so that we can empower them that, yes, it's fine to use this dialect in your culture. It's fine to be comfortable and confident about using this because it is a part of your culture, and it's important to maintain that.
For Black and brown children, the effect of being misdiagnosed and being on a caseload can be detrimental, mainly because we have an overrepresentation of Black and brown youth in special education, and it also connects to the school-to-prison pipeline. And so once we begin to track them into the special education system when they don't belong there, we affect their intrinsic motivation to academically succeed. And so the youth starts to believe that the way that they speak and the way that they present information is not okay, and it affects their self-esteem as well.
Certainly there's lots of misconceptions. So many individuals, when you talk about Ebonics or African American language, they immediately think slang or colloquialisms, and it's far bigger than that. It's far more than that. And educating teachers, educating parents, educating individuals in the community about it is an important feature.
Because there are many, many individuals in the United States who speak African American English, we've really been very vigilant around developing tools and resources and policies that give speech-language pathologists the information that they need to be able to share with others in all of their work settings. So whether they're in the schools or they're in a healthcare setting or they're in a private practice, they have the opportunity to share that information with others.
My role is to sit down with the teacher, sit down with our team and really talk about, okay, yes, this child is not able to say certain things in what we deem as mainstream American English. However, everything that he or she is saying is consistent with African American English, and essentially there's no disorder. He or she is just speaking like the people within their community. But I'm not always able to sell the teacher on that, and they kind of leave sometimes disgruntled or confused about it, and other times I see them sitting in the meeting and nodding their head and beginning to understand what's going on there.
We as SLPs really need to empower our clients as well as the community in knowing that this is an acceptable form of English. It's okay to have this. And if you think about it, everybody has a dialect, right? Depending on where you're from, your syntax or how you might say a sentence changes. The vocabulary that you're using is going to change. So I think it's acceptable, or it's important for SLPs to be able to tell other people that this is okay, and it's not something that's bad, and that we just need to be more educators, I think, for ourselves as SLPs, because a lot of the SLPs that are working with these clients, they differ racially and culturally from the clients that they're seeing. So there's this cultural and racial mismatch. So I think it's important for us to, one, educate ourselves, and then the wider community as well.
Don't you know a white ones? White lion? Tigers, white tigers. Tigers are orange with black stripes, thank you. No, they white too. Yeah, they got white, then they got, black stripes going down. That's a zebra. It's another one. It's a snow tiger. Oh, the snow tiger.
We want ASHA members and the community at large to see speech-language pathologists and ASHA as a resource in terms of trying to figure out how best to help individuals communicate effectively. ASHA's vision is based on trying to help everyone communicate effectively, which we believe to be a human right, and it's a human right. So African American English speakers have that same right to communicate effectively within their own community. We don't want to eliminate that, to minimize that. We want to make sure that our members are helping to ensure that that's a possibility.
When we separate or try to separate the individual from their language, we are taking away what makes them who they are. And so it's really important to recognize that they're not two different things. They are one, and we come as a package. And so when you wipe out my language, you also wipe out my identity and my pride and myself.
We are seen as specialists of language, We get to interact with parents and teachers and clients and students on, a day-to-day basis. And if we begin saying, we who are viewed as the language specialists, in the schools, in the hospitals, in our various places, if we begin saying African American English is a language, it's legitimate, it's beautiful, it's worthy of praise, it's a separate language, then people are going to begin to tell that story and the narrative will change.
If all teachers knew that African American English was a language, I think our educational system would change drastically. I think that teachers would be more accepting of some of the students, or teachers too, and you have to give some credit to them. A lot of times they just don't have the training or the knowledge or the background, and they're doing their best. But I think the educational system would shift. I think that students would in some ways be more trusting and recognizing that you're accepting me for who I am. You're accepting me that this is the way I speak, this is what I use in terms of my culture, it's part of who I am. And I think that the students themselves would feel more empowered and be more willing to work with these teachers so that then you can see their fullest potential.
Okay, everybody, we're back. Now, what you think about that? Think about that. What's your opinion on that particular situation? I just wanted to run that by you and see what you would think about that in the classroom and the acceptability of that. But now what I want to do now, I'm going to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, I want to run by you the Great Migration. And in this, I'm hoping that you will get something out of this as far as what we are capable of doing, okay, as a people, based on what we have already done, because we are still the same people. Hold on a minute, let's go to the commercial, we're coming right back.
Let me make sure I got this right. You have a mortgage. You were told the bank would give you a loan for your home. But when you got to the bank, they didn't give you anything or sign anything. But presto changeo, you have a new mortgage. Then you find out your mortgage has been sold to another company you don't know and don't have any contract with. It seems to me something is wrong. When you walked out the bank, you had some papers in your hand, but no check. Let's get to the bottom, down to the bottom of this kind of stuff. Go to TarhakaDebtElimination.org. That's TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Let's bring the fraud to a close. How about that? This kind of stuff is going on all over the United States, but most people don't even understand what to do about it. TarhakaDebtElimination.org.
It's one of the most overlooked stories of American history, and it features one very big number.
6 million.
6 million.
6 million.
That's the number of African Americans who took part in the Great Migration. Over the course of 60 years, they moved from the southern states to the north and west. And by doing so, they transformed the face of America.
It really changed the whole notion of our nation.
It led to some of the greatest cultural, social, and political progress.
From the civil rights movement to Black Lives Matter, from politics to sport and music, the Great Migration continues to influence all our lives.
When we think about the way we eat, live, dress, play, worship in America, so much of that is a product of the Great Migration.
This is the story of 44 presidents of the United States, 800 home runs, 4 frightened teenagers, and the hopes, fears, and dreams of 6 million African Americans who risked everything to take part in the Great Migration.
Great Migration is this massive exodus of African American people from the U.S. South to the North and the West that transformed the literal landscape of American life. It's a collection of 6 million plus individual experiences, individual courageous stories.
Between 1915 and 1975, they followed the railroads up the East Coast, west to California and along the Mississippi Valley, to cities like Chicago.
The promised land, that's how the North was thought of.
And one of the promises that was kept is the number 44. A small number that reveals the far-reaching consequences of the Great Migration. Chicago's Bud Billiken Parade is a celebration of African-American youth and culture. Watched by over 1 million people, it's the largest African-American parade in the country.
The Bud Billiken Parade is a celebration that goes up and down the spine of the black community in Chicago. It's song, it's dance, it's public displays of black excellence and community.
And it happens every year for nearly a century because of the Great Migration. 100 years ago, the African-American population of Chicago numbered just 44,103, or less than 3% of the city's total population. Today, that number is more like 800,000. If you're an aspiring politician, the Bud Billiken Parade is where you come to shake as many hands as you possibly can.
In 2007, Barack Obama was this young senator based in Chicago, and he understood to gain the endorsement, not just of Chicago's black community, but also black America, he has to receive the official nod at the Bud Billiken Parade.
The parade marks the start of his successful bid to become President of the United States.
When we think about the number 44 and Barack Obama becoming the 44th President of the United States, it's amazing that we have this African-American first.
It's an American first that's possible because Chicago isn't unique. What happens here is repeated in cities across the United States. At the start of the 20th century, 90% of African Americans live in the South. But in the cities of the North and West, African American populations increase as a direct result of the Great Migration. Until, by the 1970s, 47% live in the North.
I can't imagine a Barack Obama in 2008 without a Great Migration. I think the Great Migration is absolutely foundational to our understanding of progress for black people in this nation.
So how and why does such a transformation of American politics and society occur? It culminates with a 44, but begins with a 4. It's Chicago, 1905. And Robert Sengstack Abbott is running out of options.
He came to Chicago to be a lawyer, couldn't do well, couldn't establish a clientele.
So he applies for other jobs and is passed over for white European immigrants. When he's desperate and hungry and in a church's breadline, he's told to stand aside for the white guy.
Struggled to gain a foothold. He kept hitting roadblocks. People said he was too dark.
Down to his last 25 cents, he gambles it all on one big idea. A pencil and a notepad.
He is at his landlady's kitchen table.
He sat down and he put together a 4-page newspaper
that would become the Chicago Defender.
It starts with a print run of just 300 copies. He goes door to door in Chicago's South Side, selling his newspaper in barbershops and churches for 2 cents a copy. And the Chicago Defender becomes an instant hit.
There were other African-American papers in Chicago at the time. His paper was just one of many. But what he did that distinguished him was he understood the power of talking about progress for African-Americans and equality for African-Americans.
The Chicago Defender is the most significant African-American newspaper, and I would argue the most significant piece of journalism in the history of the American press.
Within a decade, the Chicago Defender becomes the biggest selling African-American newspaper in the entire country, selling over 100,000 copies. It's estimated that every weekly edition is passed on to 5 readers, making a total readership of over 500,000, 50% of whom aren't even in Chicago.
The Chicago Defender becomes the vehicle, the organ, the voice of beckoning African Americans to come from South to North.
Robert Abbott started to say, come to Chicago. Chicago's the best place in the world. He talked about all the jobs, all the opportunities. He talked about the ways in which you could advance and have education for your children.
When people wanted to understand life in the North, they would have a young person sit in a community of elders who might not have access to literacy, and they would read the paper to the community.
This newspaper from a big city created an excitement. It engendered a thought that, oh, I could make life better.
The paper is wildly successful and is read all over the United States in some way that operates like social media operates today.
The Chicago Defender becomes a catalyst for the first wave of the Great Migration in the first half of the 20th century. Because suddenly, every African American family in the South has a choice to make: stay or go.
Black people don't randomly choose to leave the South during the Great Migration. They move through what we call push factors and pull factors.
In this first wave, many will be pushed from the South by the legacy of broken promises of the Civil War, including the number 40, a slippery and treacherous number. For nearly 2.5 centuries after the coming of European settlers, slavery had been at the heart of the plantation economy of the southern states. By the middle of the 19th century, close to 4 million African Americans were enslaved, representing 13% of the entire population of the United States. The market value of slaves in the U.S. exceeded that of banks, factories, and railroads combined. But with the defeat of the southern states in the Civil War, slavery was not only abolished, 40,000 freed slaves were promised 40 acres and a mule.
40 acres and a mule is the idea that the federal government would help enslaved people transition into American society.
A lot plots so that coming out of bondage, we can till our own soil. We can grow our own crops. We can be self-sustainable, self-determining.
But when President Abraham Lincoln is assassinated and former slave owner Andrew Johnson becomes president, the idea is shelved.
He shut down this amazing opportunity for political and economic redistribution.
By some estimates, the value of 40 acres and a mule for those 40,000 freed slaves would be worth $640 billion today. And if all 4 million had been compensated, that number would amount to $6.4 trillion.
The lost opportunity and the betrayal is one of the key threads in the current conditions of wealth disparity in our country to this day that directly exist along racial lines.
But one broken presidential promise isn't the only push factor in the first wave of the Great Migration. 8 Supreme Court justices will also play their part. For a brief period after the end of the Civil War, the era known as Reconstruction, it seems that all you have to do is pick a number.
The Reconstruction era was this amazing moment of collective possibility, and not just for black folks, but for everyone.
Take, for example, the number 13.
The 13th Amendment abolished slavery.
Or the number 14.
If you are born here, you are a citizen of the United States.
So we have a period from 1865 to basically 1876 where African Americans are protected in the South from the hostility and terror of the whites.
This country was founded as a slave nation, and so the Reconstruction Amendment was something entirely new, an American republic not governed by white supremacy. You have this political project of what America could actually be. This was a moment where intermarriage was legal. Integration of public facilities and schools was legal. But to quote the great writer Ralph Ellison, history moves more like a boomerang than it does an arrow.
Reconstruction lasts just 12 years. When federal troops are withdrawn from the southern states in 1877, The era of Jim Crow begins and will last another 90 years.
Jim Crow is a system of laws that create a separate, parallel, in many instances unequal life for black people, so that white people who now have to interact with them because they are freed from enslavement have to do so in the minimal possible way.
If you were on a streetcar, if a white person wanted to sit down, you had to get up and move.
Black children and white children attend different schools.
There are different fountains to drink out of if you're black or white.
I heard stories of walking down a sidewalk, and if a white person is walking the other way, of a black person having to get in the dirty streets. The daily indignities of black women working in white women's kitchens, being mistreated, wages being stolen, and then sometimes having to beat back the advances of the man of the house and facing sexual violence, sometimes rape. These were the daily conditions of dehumanization, mistreatment, terror that African Americans face on a daily basis.
It turns out that the 13th and 14th Amendments are no match for the number 8. It's Tuesday, June 7th, 1892. Homer Plessy, a New Orleans shoemaker, is having trouble with a fraction. He buys a first-class ticket on the 415 Louisiana local train and takes a seat in the whites-only car.
Homer Plessy is a person who, if you saw him, you would think he was a white person.
His great-grandfather was of African descent, so he was considered 1/8 Negro. He had black blood.
Based on the laws of this country, the one-drop rule, he was a black person.
And he understood the preposterousness of segregated train lines based on black and white blood.
So he wanted to test the laws.
He sits on the train, and then at one point during the trip, he stands up and tells the conductor, "I am 1/8 Negro, and I'm not moving." And so at this point, according to the law, they had to remove him from the train, and they arrested him. His legal team argued rightfully that this Jim Crow system violated the 13th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution of the United States.
And the thought was that this case will lead to the opening of transportation for black people to be able to sit wherever they want to, on trains, on trolleys, and buses and things like that. But it backfired.
The case goes all the way to the top, where Homer's number 8 will prove no match for 8 of the Supreme Court justices.
In 1896, it comes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court shocks lots of people. They decide that there should be separate but equal facilities, and it's okay. You don't have to integrate.
It turns local Jim Crow into the law of the land. We become not a Jim Crow South, but a Jim Crow nation.
No one could imagine the Supreme Court would be so retrograde and ridiculous.
But it isn't just the Jim Crow laws that target African Americans. It's also violence. And for Ida B. Wells, the greatest push factor of them all will be the number 4,743. The granddaughter of a slave, Ida is a 5-foot Memphis powerhouse who can't stand idly by. She says, one had better die fighting injustice than die like a dog or a rat in a trap.
A true heroine of American history is Ida B. Wells.
When she's dragged off a train for refusing to give up her seat to a white woman, she goes one better than Homer Plessy. Not only does she slap a lawsuit on the railroad company, she bites into the back of the conductor's hand, and for good measure, she denounces the injustice in print.
She becomes a journalist, and she befriends a guy named Thomas Moss, who has a store called the People's Grocery Store. He's African American, and his store is very successful.
But a dispute breaks out with a rival, less successful, white-owned store.
The sheriff went to the grocery store and arrested 3 African-American males. One of them was Mr. Moss. But then the police officers and the sheriff looked the other way as a lynch mob grabbed these 3 African-American men, took them out of the jail cell, and lynched them to death, murdered them without trial.
And when Ida B. Wells hears about this, she's infuriated. She just can't believe that this would happen to a fine, upstanding person.
Believing the only way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them, she spends the following months traveling alone across the southern states, researching other lynchings from the previous decade.
This is an amazing firebrand of a woman, breaking down boundaries as not just an African American, but also as a woman, traveling across the country in dangerous terrain and territories where she herself could have been lynched.
So she carries a pistol in her handbag, vowing that if she becomes a victim herself, there'll be one less lyncher as well. First revealed by Ida B. Wells, the scale of violence against African Americans is shocking. It's now estimated that between 1882 and 1968, 4,743 African Americans were lynched. Or put another way, there was one murder every 4 days. Of the tens of thousands of lynchers and onlookers, only 49 are ever indicted and only 4 are sentenced. During the same period, nearly 200 anti-lynching bills are introduced to Congress and 0 pass. But no number can truly convey the human tragedy of so many innocent lives lost, together with the hopes and dreams of thousands of African Americans. When her own office is firebombed for revealing the truth, Ida B. Wells will herself join the Great Migration. Pushed from the South by segregation and violence, pulled to the North by hopes of freedom and a better life.
The Great Migration was understood as like a religious revival. It wasn't just called leaving. People called it an exodus from Dixie, heading to America's promised land.
In the first wave of the Great Migration between 1915 and 1935, 1.5 million African Americans will leave Dixie, including one little boy who will stun the world with the number 10.3. It's 1923, Alabama. James Cleveland, or JC to his friends, is the 10th child of a poor sharecropper who spent most of his 9 years running barefoot through the cotton fields. But tonight is different. He's packing up his life to move north with his family. He notices his dad's hands are shaking with fright, and for the first time in his life, little JC realizes this move is going to be a very big deal indeed.
This was a Herculean feat, to leave everything you knew and go to a new place of existence. The ultimate goal was freedom, but there were no guarantees. They knew the terror and the dehumanization they faced, and the freedom that could be had in the urban north was unknown, and yet they still took this leap of faith.
JC's family leave their home in secret in the middle of the night.
Deciding to go north is one thing. Getting to the north is a whole different challenge.
The Great Migration is usually talked about from the perspective of the movement for a different lifestyle, opportunities, chances, jobs. But there was also a component of danger. They could face threats on the part of white planters who they were leaving. So in many cases, African Americans would leave at night when no one was watching. When African Americans got on board the train, this was just the beginning of the battle.
African Americans who travel by train were pushed into certain cars, usually the cars at the front of the train, which is where you get all the soot, all the cinders. Also, African Americans were not allowed to go into the dining cars.
And this became a part of the African American tradition. They would take a shoebox and fill it with fried chicken and other snacks because they wouldn't be able to get food from the dining car. They might not be able to use the restroom.
JC and his family head north on the Illinois Central Railroad, along with thousands of other African Americans from the South who are seeking a new life in cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland.
When they got to the Ohio River, the unspoken divide between Jim Crow South and a different North, it was almost like a religious experience. In some cases, African Americans would stand up and begin to sing hymns and praise hallelujah. We have crossed over into a new world, a new life. Some African Americans would get up and just because they could, would sit next to a white person to show that they had become a different person, that we were entering a different way of life.
But when they arrive in the North, what then?
You get off the train and you're trying to figure out, where do I go? What do I do? Do I have relatives here? How do I go forward? It must have been a really, really disorienting experience, and at the same time, one of incredible hope and opportunity.
For JC, it means a new school in Cleveland, Ohio. The elementary teacher will ask his name. JC, he replies. But the teacher, not understanding his southern accent, thinks he says Jesse. So that's the name she writes in the roll book. The name sticks, and that's how he'll be known to history, as Jesse. Jesse Owens.
Before there was Usain Bolt, before there was Carl Lewis, there was Jesse Owens, an African-American track phenomenon. Because of the Great Migration and his relocation to Cleveland, he's able to take his skills as a track athlete and run for Ohio State University, ultimately joining the Olympic team that would go to Berlin in 1936.
And this is the era of Adolf Hitler, who has proclaimed that the white race is the supreme race.
Jesse Owens will put his own stamp on history by winning the 100-meter at the Berlin Olympics in a time of precisely 10.3 seconds.
He wins gold medal in not only the 100 and the 200, but the 4x100 and the long jump. A 4-time gold medal winner in 1936. But when Jesse Owens came back from the Olympics to be feted and celebrated at the Waldorf Hotel in New York City, because Jesse Owens is black, he had to enter the celebration through the service elevator. Celebrated and yet still relegated.
Even today, we celebrate black athletes, but once they leave the athletic arena, they still receive the same racism and the same mistreatment and the same attacks as anybody else would.
As Jesse Owens famously points out, Hitler won't shake his hand, but neither will the U.S. President, Franklin D. Roosevelt. JC is part of the first wave of the Great Migration. It's a trickle that will become a flood. Before the Great Depression, over 1 million people join him in the journey north. And in the second wave, which begins in the 40s and lasts till the 70s, 5 times as many people will leave the South.
In some ways, African Americans found in the urban north a promised land, and in other ways, they found variations on the same conditions they had just left. Malcolm X loved to say, the South is anywhere south of the Canadian border.
One young family seeking the promised land arrived to find 4,000 angry white guys instead. In 1949, Harvey Clark, a World War II veteran and college graduate, joins the second wave of the Great Migration, taking the Illinois Central Railroad north from Mississippi to Chicago. For 2 years, he lives with his wife, Janetta, and his 2 small kids in a tiny one-room tenement in Chicago's South Side. It's so small, there isn't room for the piano he's bought for his 8-year-old daughter, so he decides to move somewhere bigger, and he hopes better.
The year is 1951. There is an apartment complex in the white community of Cicero, and Harvey Clark and his family want to move in. They begin to drive into this neighborhood, and they are immediately met by white residents who stop and halt the truck. These white residents are joined by police officers, those sworn to protect the law equitably for everyone.
Harvey is grabbed by 20 police officers. He's hit 8 times, and he's told to get out of Cicero or you'll get a bullet through you. Harvey is undeterred. A month later, he, his wife, 2 kids, and all his possessions, including the piano, move into their new apartment.
Word circulates. This Negro family is in this apartment building. Groups of white individuals begin to congregate around the apartment complex. Ultimately, we have a mob of 4,000 angry whites that surround the complex, and they are whipped up into an animalistic frenzy. Men and women throw firebombs into the windows of the building. The entire apartment building is on fire.
The mob storms the apartment and they hurl the family's belongings out the window. The sofa, the chairs, the baby pictures. They smash the piano and set it alight.
The reality is white, monstrous resistance to coexistence. How dare you demonstrate that you can be equal to me, that you can live where I live, that you can do what I do and do things that I can't do. This was an arrogance and a fear and a mistrust that could incite mob violence like that happened on that day and evening in Cicero in 1951.
Because of zoning regulations and white resistance, many U.S. suburbs will remain segregated. 50 years later, the 2000 U.S. Census will reveal that of Cicero's population of 85,616, only 1% are black. The Great Migration will prove an irresistible force that will reconfigure the geography and color of America. But it's more than just the movement of people, because with new people comes new music and a new top 10, or to be precise, 79 top 10s.
All of today's popular music, whether it be hip-hop or the pop sound of a Bruno Mars or Taylor Swift, it is directly linked to the musical trek along the path of the Great Migration.
This migration brings to the north all these different sounds. Gospel music, which is the music of the church, and then Muddy Waters comes up from the Mississippi Delta, a guy who's going to give us the blues, and Louis Armstrong comes up from New Orleans, up the Mississippi River, bringing with him the sounds of jazz, where he plays a trumpet that is so revolutionary and so different it changes the way we think about music.
Both Harlem and Chicago will experience a cultural renaissance. Detroit, on the other hand, will have the number 2,648. It's the 1950s. Just like tens of thousands of other African-American families, Berry Gordy's has joined the Great Migration and come to the Motor City.
Gordy's family moves to the north looking for the opportunities provided by industrial employment, especially in a place like Detroit, and particularly the automotive industry.
He gets married, has a wife, he has a child, and he goes to work in a factory. And he hates it.
He has another 30 years ahead of him watching slow-moving car frames trundle past.
But he comes up with this idea. He wants to write music.
He dreams of starting up his own factory, a hit factory. So he hangs up his wrench and he quits his job.
He buys a house, 2648 West Grand Boulevard, and he calls it Hitsville, USA. And the idea is he's going to turn the garage and the first floor into a studio and a place where he can make music, and he and his family are going to live upstairs.
He wants to capture the wealth and the spirit of black music that's developing in this migration city of Detroit and protect it from being exploited by white record company executives. He creates an assembly line approach to churning out black talent in his Motown stable. He controls their production, their dress, their dance steps, their diction, their interviews, presenting a refined black popular sound that can be palatable to the white world.
And Motown is born.
I think back to the founder of the Chicago Defender with 25 cents, starting with very little. And Berry Gordy's little indie company becomes a major, major record label, basically with an $800 loan from his family. The Supremes, the Miracles, Stevie Wonder, the Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Martha and the Vandellas. He created a company that catapulted many, many young artists into stardom.
Between 1960 and 1969, 79 Motown records will chart in the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100, and pop music is changed forever.
That's what Barry Gray was all about. I want to be part of the American mainstream. His motto is, it's the sound of young America. And that's what Motown was.
It isn't only the genius of jazz and blues that comes north with 6 million African Americans. They also bring the number 313. In 1920, while many head north, a young single mother and her 5 children board the Freedom Train on an epic 2,000-mile journey from Georgia to California. The youngest of her children is 16 months old. His name is Jackie Robinson. 27 years later, he'll become the first African American to break the color barrier and play Major League Baseball.
Jackie Robinson, his contribution on society, absolutely incredible. Everyone thinks Colin Kaepernick was one of the first people to oppose standing for the anthem for racial justice. Jackie Robinson talked about that in the 60s and 70s.
Jackie Robinson will end his career with a batting average of .313. But sometimes the numbers and baseball stats can be deceiving. Robinson begins his professional career segregated from white players.
In 1890, the major white leagues of the era laid down this edict called the Gentleman's Agreement, that no major white baseball leagues would ever integrate individual black players or black teams. From this comes the emergence of an independent black baseball league. Black baseball teams develop and grow to the point where people like Branch Rickey of the Brooklyn Dodgers saw the gate receipts of regular Negro League games and said, you know what, wait a minute, I gotta get a piece of that.
He recruits Jackie Robinson, but not because of his stats.
Jackie Robinson was not the pride of the Negro League, so it wasn't that he was the best player. It was that he was the right guy for the job, somebody who they knew could handle what this person who broke the color line would have to endure. When you consider that Jackie Robinson was a low-level player in the Negro Leagues and a superior player in the white league, that raised the stakes on this story, especially when you think about a player like Josh Gibson. He was reported to have over 800 home runs in the Negro Leagues.
Jackie Robinson's career batting average is .313. Babe Ruth has an average of .342. Josh Gibson's is even better at .374.
Josh Gibson was the Negro Leagues version of Babe Ruth. At the same time, he had better stats than Babe Ruth.
In the Negro Leagues, they would call Babe Ruth the white Josh Gibson. At the end of the day, the story of Jackie Robinson and the African Americans who followed is not one of poor black players being rescued by the benevolent white father. This is a story of seeing the value of the Negro League and trying to capitalize on this independent black enterprise in a way that could benefit the white major league.
But it will take more than one man's batting average to break down the color barrier. As well as their worldly possessions, their music, and their culture, the migrants also brought with them the possibility of change. And in the struggle for civil rights, one thing that changes forever is politics.
One of the important connections between the Great Migration and the modern civil rights movement is black Americans' ability to get elected to political offices.
After the Civil War, one number above all others holds out the possibility of change.
The 15th Amendment, which said you cannot be denied the right to vote based on your race.
Black people start organizing themselves. They are able to vote, and they elect people at all levels of government.
Between 1863 and 1877, approximately 1,500 African American men, many of whom are born enslaved, become the first black Americans elected or appointed to positions on the federal, state, and local level. 14 are members of the House of Representatives, 2 are senators. 90% of African American men register to vote for the very first time. But it turns out that for African Americans living in the Jim Crow South, their right to vote will be taken away by made-up rules, like knowing the number of bubbles in a bar of soap. Take someone like Ida Mae Brandon. In the 1930s, she's a sharecropper rearing turkeys, picking cotton, and struggling to keep her two small kids clothed and fed. Despite the number 15, it has never occurred to her to vote in an election.
The Jim Crow South has organized itself so that black people are discriminated against in their politics. One of the examples is a literacy test where you go to register to vote, and the question could be how many bubbles are in a bar of soap. There might be intimidation that happens where members of the white community hang dummies by a noose and have a sign that says, "This N-word voted," as a way to suggest that if you vote, you might be hanged.
When Ida Mae joins the Great Migration and leaves Mississippi, she finds herself in Chicago.
Before the Great Migration, it was very difficult for black people to participate in politics, but the likelihood they could participate in the North was much greater than it would be in the South.
The 1940 presidential election is the first time that Ida Mae has ever stepped into a voting booth, and the first time in her life she has ever had a say in political matters.
The Great Migration fundamentally reshapes electorates in the North. So politics is all about who can vote, how easy it is for them to vote, and whether they actually turn out to vote.
Ida Mae's vote is one of more than 2 million cast for Franklin D. Roosevelt in the swing state of Illinois. And it's because of the Great Migration he's elected for a third term. It's a historic election because under Roosevelt, the U.S. will enter World War II. But for African Americans, politics is a slippery game, and having a vote proves not nearly enough.
In history books and in popular memory, we understand the civil rights movement as being primarily focused on the U.S. South, battling with the peculiar institution known as Jim Crow. But as the migration brought African Americans into urban, northern, and western cities, the civil rights campaign migrated and grew at the same pace.
In Greensboro, in the southern state of North Carolina, it begins with the number 4. In February 1960, a group of teenage friends have had enough and decide to take matters into their own hands. History will know them as the Greensboro 4.
Protesting is as American history. Our founding fathers did it. It's one of the 10 Bill of Rights, the right to protest.
It's an ordinary Monday afternoon in Greensboro, North Carolina. 4 college students are shopping at Woolworth's, a typical 5 and dime store. At the cashier, they buy toothpaste and some school supplies, a notebook, and some colored pencils. On the far side of the shop is the lunch counter. They can smell the aroma of coffee and apple pie and hear the whir of the soda fountain and its milkshakes and ice cream sodas.
This was a meeting point throughout most cities, the lunch counter at a Woolworth's. So in a moment where African Americans are arguing for the right of equal access to both public and private facilities, it's not by accident that the Woolworth's counter would become a site of struggle.
An invisible line separates the 4 friends in the shopping area from the lunch counter. It's called segregation. To cross that line would risk arrest, a beating, or worse. But they cross it anyway and sit down at the counter where they're refused service. The following day, 25 students turn up at the lunch counter to protest. On the 3rd day, there are 63, and by Friday, 300.
This would become a flashpoint in what was emerging as the civil rights movement. It was 4 young African Americans who made the decision to sit at the counter and endure epithets, violence, to remain resolute, civil, and resounding. The image of these 4 African Americans sitting there facing the riotous, animalistic actions of these white crowds surrounding them became a turning point.
They had incredible optimism of, we can make this country live up to its promise. And that's what we're going to do. And if it means that we have to face death, then we have to face it. It's incredibly brave. It's an heroic period in American history.
Within a month, the protests have spread to 30 cities in 7 states involving 50,000 students. From Greensboro and elsewhere in the South, the civil rights movement heads north along the route of the Great Migration.
Martin Luther King marches through white neighborhoods on the west side of Chicago, and he says that he had never seen anything like this in his life. Marching through Chicago's white neighborhoods, he was hit with the N-word, there were nooses, there were swastikas and Confederate flags. He was hit in the head with a brick. He said some of the worst racial violence he'd ever experienced was in Birmingham, Alabama. And he called Chicago the Birmingham of the North.
So what does it take to sign civil rights into law? It turns out you need not just one pen, but several thousand.
The Great Migration has a tremendous impact on politics in the North. In the past, politicians only had to make decisions about how they might engage white voters, but once black voters come into these cities through the Great Migration, politicians have to make calculations about how they will engage them.
They had to pay attention to the black vote, and that changed the dynamic in the whole country.
For one young senator seeking to become president, the answer seems all too easy.
As part of his campaigning to black people in 1960, John F. Kennedy said that he could end housing segregation and discrimination with the stroke of a pen.
In one of the tightest presidential elections, it's the African American vote that gives the victory to Kennedy. But when he gets into the Oval Office, John F. Kennedy can't seem to find a pen anywhere to sign civil rights into law.
Black people from around the nation mailed pens to the White House to remind him of his promise that he could end segregation with the stroke of a pen.
Thousands and thousands of pens showed up at the White House.
It's not until 1964 that President Johnson, Kennedy's successor, signs into law the Civil Rights Act. And just because he can, he uses 75 pens. In the 20th century, 6 million African Americans make the trek north and west. Their search for justice and freedom will continue to this day, driven not by a number, but by a hashtag.
The Black Lives Matter movement basically speaks to the failed promises of the Great Migration. The jaundiced reality of the North as a promised land. That the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren whose parents and grandparents had made the trek north to make a better life for their children are realizing that conditions were not as they had hoped.
The issues that Black Lives Matter is focused on today are the same issues that we were fighting about during the Great Migration. There has been progress, but there is much further to go.
To this day, the children and grandchildren of the Great Migration continue to transform America.
While the Great Migration might be an unfinished project, it's a spirit, it's an ambition, it is an audacity to believe that there can be another way despite the overwhelming force of one's current condition. That spirit is carried within me. Most historians don't have the opportunity to be a product of the history that they tell. But I can say that I am a historian that is proud to be a product of the history of the Great Migration.
What I see with the Great Migration was people creating their own story, having agency. And I think that their children and grandchildren, one of them, have benefited from that incredible push onward and forward.
Okay, everybody. Now we know some of what it takes to create generational wealth. Okay? How about that? The Great Migration. Actually, I've never seen it put into a nutshell like this here. All based on historical facts and stuff. But we are talking about generational wealth, and so what I've decided to do is do everything within my power that I could possibly do to show you what it will take for you to deal with such a monumental task. It can be done. As long as you remember one thing, there's only one color in America, and that color is green. That doesn't mean discrimination gonna go away. That don't mean, because you still got people who are stupid. Now, I'm not saying ignorant. Ignorant means that is something you don't know. But when you know better and you refuse to do better, and you looking, first of all, that's stupid, but you keep doing the same wrong thing over and over and over again, looking for a different result, and then turn around and call yourself living. No, that's insanity. You ain't living. You think you living, but you ain't living. And so we only have a few more moments on the clock. And so what I'm going to do now is I haven't heard from my friend Bolson tonight. And I really would like to hear from Bolson. And let me make sure I got this in right. Okay, yeah, we got this right. But we're not, what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch out on that. And I'm going back to talking black in America. Now, more of y'all, hold on. We got 19 minutes to go, so we're going to ride on out on this right here, and then we'll close on out.
You know, my father, who's an entertainer, wrote a song called Word Up. And it was about the language. It was about someone saying, word up, right? That was the language of our street.
When I talk to people and I ask them about that, ask them about what blackness is, what black language is to them, what does sounding black mean to them, more often than not, it's about a sound and a rhythm, this sort of movement and fluidity. It's sort of imbued with this cultural richness.
Language is music. They say picture is worth 1,000 words, but you know, I feel like I grew up in an environment where a person could use a few words and it felt like 1,000 pictures.
I'm afraid it's one of the great dilemmas, one of the great psychological hazards of being an American Negro. One's born in a white country where one was once a slave, where all the standards, none of it applies to you. Obviously I hadn't always talked the way I had forced myself to learn how to talk. I realized it was a cadence, it was a beat. It was not a question of dropping S's or N's or G's, but a question of the beat, really. It's that tone and that sound, you know, which is in me.
What defines talking black? Like, that's the real question to me, because talking black to me is an insult when you say you're talking black or you're talking white. Yeah. Because I choose to pronounce my word. I'm not talking black. I'm totally black. I'm black.
Yeah.
So every word that comes out of my mouth is me talking.
Yeah, but
so I'm talking black.
But you're not talking black because you don't sound black while you're talking.
And that's my point. And I'm offended by that. What do you mean I don't sound black? I'm black, so I sound just as black as you do.
While I think anybody who's African American, you speak African American language because it's about you, the person, being African American, what you use. At the same time, I'm sort of pushed on that notion when I hear people or know that people exist who don't really seem to sound in a particular way.
I'm told all the time if somebody answers the phone, oh, I thought you were a white boy. What was that supposed to mean? I'm speaking the way that my family spoke. But did I know the language? Do I know another language? Yeah, I know another language.
It's just like anything else. It's surely as a kid learns how to use words,
they learn how to use them in the ways that they're being used.
What is it you know when you know African American English, when you know it as a system, when you use it as your native language? Speakers of African American English, from my particular viewpoint, are those speakers who grow up in African American English speaking communities.
Many people assume that black English is one thing. All black people speak it pretty much the same way. There are many, many types of black English here in the United States.
Certainly there are differences that are regional differences, but I think there's some core aspects, and I think that's shared by many, many, many speakers of African American English. But as a speaker who grew up in Southwest Louisiana, I do things with African American English that I might not expect my counterparts who grew up in some other areas to do.
If I walk up to him, I say, "What's up?" I'm speaking. I'm saying, "Hey, how you doing?" I ran into some guys from New York up there in the middle of here, and we're in a big Burger King getting something to eat. I'm standing in the line. They standing beside me. I was like, "What's up?" And he just turned to me like, "What's up?" You know, to them, what's up means, I'm like, no, I was speaking. I'm from Mississippi.
I'm in between Cali, St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, Philly, New York. You'll get a different greeting. That's just the start. I can go down to Atlanta and say, you know, what it do? Detroit, what up, though? New York, what's up, son? Cali, what up, blood? You better be careful where you at. You say blood, though. But they know if you say, what's up, blood, it's family.
Well, I'm from a place where we don't use the dialect that I use here, but I'm able to maneuver with it. So you might hear, what up, shorty? What up, though? You know, and I'll just give them something that I had from Detroit. It'd be like, what up, shorty? I'd be like, what up, though? Or if you go to New Orleans and say, well, hey, Wody. The language gives you access and it'll give you a barrier. So the best thing to do is use it for your access.
I am from an African American background, but I went to a predominantly white school. And even when I was younger, my black family members would make fun of me and call me white girl. White girl, you talk like a white girl, you talk like a white girl, because they lived in a more urban area and I lived in the suburbs. So all my life it's kind of been this, I talk like this with this group of people, and then I talk like this with this group of people.
I think a lot of people are surprised at how much individual speakers can actually shift. I use sort of mainstream ways of talking so much in my professional life that a lot of people doubt that I actually speak any other way. But when I'm outside that professional setting, it really is sort of my language of comfort. It's my language of home. It's my language of family. It's my language of friendship. I think you can look at middle-class speakers and assume that they don't speak African-American vernacular English because all I'm hearing is standard English. But what happens is that a lot of middle-class speakers do what I like to call code switching. I consider myself to be a code switcher, but I don't spend a lot of time thinking now I will use the vernacular. So this is a girlfriend that I'm talking to.
Because let me tell you, that daycare tuition ain't no joke. It ain't no joke. Yeah. But I only got a few more months, girl, and we'll be out. A few more months. This is it for us, girl.
And so the last one is me with my mom.
Where you from? I was like, Columbia. What part of Columbia you don't know about Hague? I was like, the suburbs? And he thought that was just so funny. But I'm like, I don't know nothing about no doggone Hague.
With any kind of code switching, I think it happens below the level of conscious awareness.
When I'm talking to my sisters, it's very casual, it's very comfortable, but when I'm talking to, you know, other people or when I'm talking to professors, it's like, for them, it's like I'm a different person. And it makes you self-conscious and it makes you feel, for me, as though I was not necessarily being true to myself or being black, but then you come to find that it's okay to kind of meet people where they are.
It's so interesting, this issue of identity, language, acceptance, and inclusion or exclusion. I want to be included, so I will use a certain type of language. Who wants to be excluded?
You have this kind of complex push in which on the one hand, the language is vibrant, it's fulfilling, it's expressive, it's enjoyable, and on the other hand, you have African Americans dealing with the larger society, getting pushback, getting misunderstanding.
Unless you have your own company or you're a rapper or you're an athlete with vernacular, you are going to be pushed out of opportunities and marginalized. For survival, economic survival, I'm going to have to do that song and dance.
African American English has a place, but for the most part, it's always relegated to entertainment in rap music, R&B, things like that, but it's not okay outside of those realms.
The game only changes if you can commodify certain aspects of culture in disadvantaged communities. But the game doesn't really change when it comes to the different things that we see as professional and managerial. They're changing in the sense that they're allowing more of us in who were historically excluded. But in order to be in, we have to read the cultural codes of that space. I enjoy the nuances of how they speak and how I speak, and I'm not changing me, but I'm also grown. I do tell them, and I'm very transparent and honest about the fact that you live in a world where you do need to translate, and you do need to code switch, and you do need to speak King's English, and you do need to make sure that you're able to navigate the systems, right? Because there is privilege, and that does exist.
It was always very contentious about what we should do with student language. They need to have standard English in order to be successful in school the way it's set up right now. But there was a lot of times a real negative, people talked about student language in a really negative way. That came not just from white teachers, but that came from African American teachers. It came from parents. It came from societal messages.
Me telling you what you just said is said incorrectly is like telling you that your mama is not smart. What I just said, my mom said to me. That's where I got it from, or my dad, or my people, or whatever. If I said, that's not how smart people talk, because that's what teachers say, right? That's not the correct way to say that. Then what you're not saying is that everybody in my life doesn't speak correctly, right? What you're not saying is that everybody other than you, right, is wrong, which can't be right.
People have the impression that African American English is nothing more than a collection of errors because that's how they've been socialized. If it's not standard English, it's wrong. So we have this framework that all of us have been indoctrinated into. There's a right and a wrong in language. Language itself is always right because there's always a systematicity, a patterning to it.
All stigmatized languages usually have this false reputation of having no structure or having no grammar.
What does standard English accomplish that these so-called versions of substandard English don't accomplish in terms of communication? Nothing. You know what I mean? Nothing at all. Anything that seems to stand in the way, you say, oh, it'll help you get a job. Well, is that because of the language? It's not that you're unable to communicate, or is that because of all these various isms that stand in the way of you being able to take care of yourself?
That's the one thing that people don't understand the most. This is not random. People are not making mistakes. People are not confused about a rule. They are governed by a different set of rules.
In African American language, you can say things like, he happy, or John tall, or he the man. You might say, well, okay, folks are just leaving out is or are. But they're not just leaving it out. In language, nothing is ever just like random. You can just leave it out or put it in. No, there's a very, very strict set of rules. Like, there's some places where you can't leave it out.
You will hear speakers say quite often, he nice, he running. But you wouldn't hear those speakers say, I nice, I running. And you can see these patterns emerging as children are developing African American English. So people don't wake up
at 15 and just start speaking African American English. This is a system that's really in place early on, and children are working it out as they become older.
Let me give you a different example that people talk about a lot. You can say, John be studying Saturday nights, okay? Now, a lot of people think that that be is just like is in English. I could look at somebody sitting in front of me and I could say, John's sitting down right now. But I can't say, John, be sitting down right now. Be always means that something happens habitually, frequently, and so on.
It's a whole bunch of people in New York that we know, and the way they be talking and stuff. The way they be talking and stuff.
You acquire it as part of the normal human facility of acquiring a language.
A lot of times people assume that there is some linguistic basis for, the stigma against a variety. And they're not aware that it really is about the people.
The issue, Mr. Chairman, has received a lot of attention all over the United States. And I simply want to say that I think Ebonics is absurd.
In the mid-90s, 1995, 1996, there was a big Ebonics controversy. The Oakland School Board was trying to get what had been fairly solidly established linguistic research into schools.
Many linguists have stated that Oakland's decision is credible, it is rational, and a potentially effective way to improve the academic standard of its students.
And the public really misunderstood the message of what was happening and reacted in ways that kind of set back what educators were trying to do with language.
That's just bad English, isn't it? How could you say that's a language?
No, that's different English.
No,
that's
it's
not
bad
That's
English.
not, but that's your opinion that it's bad. No, it's not
A lot of teachers just kind of take what they've heard, sort of the predominant social narratives, and they just sort of, reproduce them. When we start being more critical of those, when teachers start thinking about them more closely, then we've got a lot more opportunities to help kids.
I'm really actually quite tickled when I move into classroom spaces and I see how facile kids are with language, even if they're not, adept as we measure it on a test with standard English. But they are so adroit at moving back and forth and talking to one another and volleying. And we don't know how to, fold that kind of energy, that kind of skill into the test that we're using to evaluate them that then has some serious consequences for their mobility in American society.
Because language and identity are so closely tied, if we value more language, then we also value more student ways of being within schools.
In this country, if this person says he be going to work.
The average citizen who encountered the term of Ebonics during the Oakland controversy did so at a time when late-night talk show hosts were, lampooning the term. And as a professional linguist, I was disheartened when I saw so many people mocking a term that referred to linguistic circumstances that I think should be better understood by the entire nation, but which have been the object of linguistic discrimination since the inception of slavery. Slave descendants have a unique linguistic heritage in comparison to every other immigrant group that came to this country. African slaves, when they were captured, were often isolated linguistically from others that spoke their own mother tongue while they were on the west coast of Africa. That linguistic isolation was also maintained on the ships during the Atlantic crossing. And as a result of that, not one indigenous African language has survived the Atlantic crossing intact. Once they got here, it was illegal to teach them to read and write. For hundreds of years, slaves were denied access to education. As a result of that, many of the linguistic stereotypes, many of the negative linguistic stereotypes that people embrace regarding African American English, dismissing it as, the language of someone who's being lazy or not attending to language, doesn't fully appreciate the linguistic isolation that slave descendants experienced is unlike any other immigrant group in this country.
When they were brought here
African Americans were segregated into plantations. That's what happened in the Caribbean also. And what they did was to invent new languages, new varieties, taking linguistic properties from the surrounding varieties and creating new forms. These are creations of people put in an absolutely horrible set of circumstances, and out of that milieu came new language forms.
We're standing on an island where we know 40% of all people of color that were taken and survived the Middle Passage, that arrived in North America, first step foot on North American soil right here on this island of Sullivan's Island. Any vessel coming into the New World, coming into the port of Charleston, were required to quarantine their cargo, African cargo, human cargo, here on this island for approximately 10 days.
Okay, we come down to the close of the broadcast, and I hope we've answered the questions about our generational wealth in language and networking and rise or die and contracts and all this from every conceivable angle. But nevertheless, I've been your host, Tarhaka Amana L. Bay, and until next time, y'all have a good evening.
fire, flood, tornado, hurricane. The damage they can cause to your home is devastating. But there's another disaster that strikes when you least expect it. I'm talking about your own insurance company when they deny your claim. If you believe your homeowner's insurance isn't paying what they should, let the lawyers at Farah & Farah review your policy word for word for free. Farah & Farah, here for you, here for good. Jacksonville.
ET is Ryan Seacrest here. People always say it's good to unwind, but that's easier said than done. The exception, Chumba Casino. They actually make it easier done than said, or at least the same. Chumba Casino is an online social casino with hundreds of casino-style games like slots and blackjack. Play for fun. Play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sign up now and collect your free welcome bonus at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.